Chapter 1706. Under Grimm's guidance, they continued to descend into different abysses. After bypassing many forks in the road, the abyss they came to this time was quite special. The entrance was filled with an extremely dense, nameless fog. Due to the influence of the chaos attribute, the fog would condense into various offensive limbs, tentacles, and even independent individuals to prevent anyone from getting close. Even without the obstruction of the fog, the abyss was also in a sealed state. Chaos tentacles weaved into an abyssal mouth that could block king-level attack. Grimm simply explained, "The current abyss is called the Chaos Cell. Many troublesome fellows are locked down there. Of course, if there is a need for them, they will occasionally be released. Otherwise, Dad would not do such a waste of resources and space. It would be more convenient to just send them to the Abyss Party as food. The cell is guarded by one of Mr. Fogg's clones. We can just go in directly." As the two approached, a seemingly normal glass jar rose from the depths of the fog. All the fog gathered toward the glass jar and condensed, until all of it was compressed into a blurred liquid state. There were even some small particles floating in it. At the same time, a black robe spread out from the bottom of the jar, symbolizing the body. Before the two could explain, Mr. Fogg condensed a fog arm from his black robe and attached it to Han Dong's body. Fog covered every part of his body and quickly completed a body inspection. "Your condition is barely passable. Naya is waiting for you down there. Go." "Grimm, today's situation is special. Only Nicholas is allowed to go to the Chaos Cell." When Grimm heard this, he did not care about the other party's identity as a superior. A displeased expression appeared on his face. "Strange. I can usually go in whenever I want. Why can't I go in today?" Mr. Fogg did not explain much. Instead, he passed a gray letter from the fog. "This is a letter that Naya asked me to pass to you." Although Mr. Fogg and the Grey Walker were both superior, Grimm was more afraid of the latter. After skimming through the contents of the letter, although he was reluctant, considering the person mentioned in the letter, he finally gave up the idea of going to the Chaos Cell. Before he left, he reached out and placed his hand on Han Dong's shoulder. "Naya seems to have something very important to talk to you about. She even applied for full access to the Chaos Cell from my father. I believe this is the main reason why you're heading to the center of chaos. In that case, I won't disturb you for the time being. Once you've settled your own matters, you can come to the royal court to find me. Remember, it's very dangerous down there. Come out alive." Han Dong could naturally see Grimm's unhappiness and the conflicting state of suppressing his madness. He hurriedly comforted him. "After I deal with the matters here, I should be able to reach a higher level. Then, let's go to the Abyss Party and have a good time." "Yes, I'm personally looking forward to it." With Green's departure, Han Dong also breathed a sigh of relief. Next, he could roughly guess what the Grey Walker wanted him to do. With Grimm by his side, it would indeed affect his cultivation and understanding of the faceless myth path. At this moment, Mr. Fogg's voice was heard. "Grimm has changed a lot recently. Go on in, Nicholas." After saying that, the arm formed by the gray fog quickly enlarged and grabbed the deformed mouth that was blocking the entrance to the abyss. Slowly, it tore open a crack that was just big enough for Han Dong to enter. Even though it was only a crack the size of a human, there was still a strong stream of chaos air gushing out. For a moment, a sense of danger spread throughout his body. It even made Han Dong's muscles tense up, and the black vortex in his abdomen began to slowly rotate. But Han Dong did not hesitate too much. He quickly increased his speed and squeezed in close to the crack. Previously, when Mr. Fogg examined Han Dong's body, he left a wisp of fog that turned into a very low, faintly discernible sentence, "Don't die." The voice ended. The fog dissipated. Crack. When the jagged entrance was completely sealed, endless darkness instantly covered Han Dong's demonic eye. It was not just his vision. Even his hearing and smell were forcibly sealed. He could only rely on his crazy laughter to barely maintain his perception field of less than a meter. The sudden sensory seal gave Han Dong a sense of fear of the unknown. He immediately understood why even a lunatic like Grimm was unwilling to come here. This absolute sensory seal was like imprisoning an individual in a dark cell, and the most fundamental freedom would be restricted. Stepping into this place would mean becoming a prisoner, so naturally, not many people were willing to go. Crazy laughter hung on Han Dong's face. He continued to release his mental field to maintain a small range of perception, and at the same time, to resist the fear of the unknown. How did this happen? My sensory level is completely comparable to a mythical body, but it was sealed in an instant. At this moment, a light bulb flashed in Han Dong's mind. Wait, the design concept of the Chaos Cell, could it be that it is an absolute sense of sensory seal and not a physical confinement cell? As long as this sensory seal can be maintained, even if the prisoner is not bound to the cell, and is not chained, he is still in a state of imprisonment. He will wander endlessly in the darkness. This is also the most dangerous place. Once the wandering prisoners bump into each other, there will be a fight. This is where the danger comes from. Just as Han Dong thought this through, a voice suddenly rang out. A voice went straight to his brain. That's right. The complete sensory seal is the design concept of the Chaos Cell, and it is also the design concept that I proposed. Senior. When the voice sounded, the envoy's mark between Han Dong's eyebrows also lit up slightly, giving a kind of spiritual guidance. The moment he found the right direction, he immediately spread out the crow's wings on his back, flapping slowly to avoid causing a large movement. Finally, he landed on a platform with dead skin structure. Light source. A faint gray light source was shining not far away. This was also the first time Han Dong saw a light source since he came to the Chaos Cell. Taking a closer look, it was the Gray Walker, as usual, wearing a gray vest, striped trousers, and leather shoes, appearing in human form. Its face clearly had a very three-dimensional facial structure, but it could not be remembered. But she couldn't remember it, and every time she looked at it, it corresponded to a different handsome face. The oil lamp in its hand was emitting a gray light, illuminating an area of about 3 meters. Before Han Dong could speak, a palm gently pressed against the surface of its brain, resonance sensing, allowing the gray tentacles inside to wrap around the surface of the walker's palm, reading the relevant information. The 2 pieces of the puzzle were of high quality. Now, only the last puzzle piece related to Faceless is left? Although the quality of the first 2 puzzle pieces is very high, your prison world has not grown and developed together. In this way, the next special training is very important. Characteristics? Out of instinct, a premonition of death filled his body. Chapter 1707. Before the special training begins, I'll take you around here first. It's necessary to familiarize yourself with and adapt to the cell in advance. After all, the people locked here have adapted to it for a long time. If I let you start directly, there's a high chance that you'll accidentally die in the early stages. Okay. Han Dong didn't ask too much about the special training. When the time was right, the other party would naturally explain. The walker carried an oil lamp and strolled on the cell platform made of dead skin. Han Dong quickened his pace, and caught up as soon as possible, enveloping his body in the range of the gray light. In the cell where one's senses were absolutely sealed, such light was the most luxurious and precious. It could not only dispel the fear of the unknown, but also allow Han Dong to slowly adapt to this environment where one's senses were sealed. Han Dong estimated that he might stay here alone for a long time for the next special training. By the way, have you met the king? The Gray Walker didn't put on the airs of a superior king at all. As he led Han Dong to familiarize himself with the place, he chatted, The only existence in the world that could be called king by the Grey Walker should be the one that Han Dong met when he first came to the Chaos Royal Court. It was the same lifespan as the world, the oldest product of chaos, the origin of the mantis demons. Yes, I've met him. A hint of surprise flashed in the Walker's eyes. It seemed that he didn't expect that Han Dong would be personally summoned by that existence on his first visit to the Chaos Royal Court. A hint of interest flashed in the Grey Fog's eyes. What kind of meeting was it? Tell me about it. Han Dong described in detail the scene where he was immersed in the melody, and when he woke up, he was clustered in the Chaos Stones. The Chaos Stones in front of me gradually dissipated, revealing a huge and majestic throne. Although I already realized what kind of existence was sitting on it, I didn't know what was going on at that time. Perhaps it was because of the madness of chaos, but the desire to pry exceeded life and death. Even the remaining rationality in my body couldn't stop the crazy prying behavior. As my body disintegrated one by one, I peeked at the surface of that existence and even briefly looked at him. This description caused the Walker to stop in his tracks. No wonder your body has an ancient feel to it. I thought it was the ancient transformation you underwent in the secret dimension, but it was a gift from the chaos. That's right. Your consciousness shouldn't be able to withstand the gaze of the king, right? My consciousness fell into a strange state of deep sleep. I fell into the deepest part of the dreamlands, a cavern built with chaos stones. It was there that I saw the origin of the universe and understood the origin of that existence and the origin of the hybrid demons. The Walker nodded thoughtfully. I see. Indeed, this is the only way to restore your consciousness. You are indeed very suitable here. When talking about the origin of the universe, Han Dong quickly asked about a doubt in his heart. That's right, Senior. If the hybrid demons were the main species of this world, then where did the human species come from? I brought them here from fate, because according to my judgment, humans are an interesting species, and would be of great help to the development of our world. Han Dong's eyes widened. He had always thought that humans were born accidentally in the history of the universe. He did not expect the humans of S-01 to be imported. That's right. The original Black Tower kept in contact and cooperated with us. We often communicated with the Black Tower and realized that if we followed the normal development of the world, humans would be born. At first, I was the same as the other hybrid demons. We didn't care about such weak and lowly existences. After a period of deep contact, I realized that this species was very interesting, and they had some special traits that the hybrid demons did not have. So, we spent a lot of money to get a group of humans to come to our world and label them as servants to live on a planet suitable for them. Of course, many unpleasant things happened after that. Han Dong noticed the key words in this sentence and quickly asked, "What special traits?" Nicholas, as the middleman, you should know better than me, right? The Walker purposely did not give a clear answer. At the same time, the warm-up and familiarization of the area before the special training ended here. On the platform where the two were now, there was an opening similar to a belly button, which seemed to lead to a deeper area. The basic structure of the Chaos Cell is based on layers, and then connected by umbilical cords. These umbilical cords are taken from the sheep of the Black Forest, and it is an irreversible one-way channel, ensuring that the prisoners here can only go down and never go up. Next is the content of the special training. Han Dong hurriedly focused his attention and listened to the important content that was related to him. I will not give you any direct guidance, because the path you will take will be different from mine. The faceless myth you are pursuing comes from the head. Since you want to build the perfect puzzle of the myth, you must first understand faceless. Therefore, in the next half a year, you will stay in the Chaos Cell to search for the answer. The environment here will help the whole search process. After half a year, I will come here to take you out. As long as you can find the answer, surviving will be a relatively easy task. Half a year? That's right. This is the minimum time I have given you after considering your talent, and I know very well that you seem to be in a hurry. This is already the fastest plan. Okay. After all, Han Dong's main purpose of going to the center of chaos this time was to go for the faceless myth. Since the walker said so, he would not have any objections. After carefully considering the time limit of half a year, Han Dong could not help but tremble. It was impossible to maintain the effect of the crazy laughter for such a long time. It was impossible to maintain a small range of perception. If he wanted to survive, he had to adapt to the feeling of being unable to sense anything and having all his senses sealed. Moreover, a powerful prisoner of chaos could emerge from the prison of endless darkness at any time. Let me remind you, don't go too deep. The thing at the bottom is not something you can deal with. When the voice ended, the only gray light source was instantly extinguished, and the aura of the gray walker disappeared at the same time. Endless darkness instantly invaded Han Dong's entire body. Because there was no perception, if Han Dong's hands and feet were all cut off at this time, he might not have any reaction. When he really sensed the danger, it might also be the moment of death. However, after experiencing a series of familiarity and adaptation, Han Dong stabilized his emotions. Senior Gray has already reminded me. What I have to do here is not how to survive, nor how to adapt to this environment. Instead, it is to find the answer to faceless. All the facial features on his face disappeared, and the disguise was completely removed. Han Dong even reached out to wipe away the red smile on his face, ensuring that the whole braised egg was smooth and clean. He had made a decision in his heart. In the next half a year, Han Dong would not use any abilities related to the crazy laughter or black magic. He would turn into a faceless person and wander between the cells. Chapter 1708. Before Han Dong figured out some things, he had no intention of squeezing his body into the umbilical cord and going deeper. In the early stage, he was just wandering aimlessly on the surface. Due to the period of familiarization time given by the Grey Walker, Han Dong had already suppressed his fear of absolute imprisonment to the minimum. He could basically move freely without perception. During the long wandering, his worries about external threats slowly dissipated. On the first day, Han Dong was still a little vigilant. From time to time, he would stop to sense the situation around him. On the second day, Han Dong had become indifferent. Perhaps after 2 or 3 hours, he would be a little vigilant or check if his body was injured. On the third day, Han Dong had completely turned into a lonely wanderer, wandering freely in the surface area. When his worries about the outside world were completely reduced to, the world became abnormally quiet, and even reached a state of tranquility that he had never experienced in his life. His heart lake was in a state of complete stillness. In retrospect, it seemed that it had been a long time since he had really calmed down to think about some problems, or to review and organize the past. He even shifted his thoughts to the moment when he had just been reborn, or rather, when he had advanced from the primitive world to this place. At that time, he was in a similar state. When he was in the state of a cell mass, all kinds of senses did not exist. In order to choose the best body, Han Dong wandered in the mysterious prison for 7 years. However, compared to looking for the best body, the purpose of this wandering was more profound. What Han Dong wanted to find was a concept that already existed in his body, but he had yet to fully understand. What is faceless? The memories continued. He abandoned the bodies of prisoners many times to get the prison warden's key and found the faceless head in the center of the prison. Han Dong officially started his journey to the new world from the beginning. Coincidentally, he was brought back to the Holy City by a night squad that was investigating outside, and because the weight was not enough, by chance, he chose an extremely weak body of a suicide victim that did not need to occupy the weight value, and thus obtained his name in the new world. Warren. Nicholas, since then, due to the limitations of human nature and in order to live in the holy city, Han Dong had been pretending to be a human with the help of the imitation given by the head. This was because Han Dong believed that he was a human and that his soul belonged to a human. Therefore, this kind of imitation was very natural and not at all out of place. In the following days, he successfully obtained the status of an official knight in the holy city. He was recognized by the parliament and made many friends. Han Dong had accepted this setting from the very beginning, and from his soul, he believed that he was a human. He had never thought deeply about what kind of species he belonged to or whether he could still be classified as a human. Now, in a state of complete tranquility, Han Dong, who had been wandering around in the faceless state, suddenly picked up this initial and most fundamental question and seriously considered it. Was he a human? Or should he be classified as a hybrid demon? Or perhaps both. Perhaps this question seemed meaningless, but Han Dong's intuition told him that the answer might be related to faceless, and it might even help him find the root of faceless. No longer strolling, he sat cross-legged on the ground. He thought from the most fundamental definition of a human, and then divided his thoughts into two to debate in his brain. The black vortex torso reduced the body's energy consumption to the minimum. Even if Han Dong did not eat or drink for a long time, it was completely fine. It ensured that Han Dong's thinking behavior would not be affected by the physical needs of his body. Just like that, a few more days passed. A special situation also appeared here. A chaos prisoner with a conch structure on his back was inadvertently approaching Han Dong's position. It belonged to a visitor from the deep sea who came to the center of chaos hundreds of years ago. He tried to use this most primitive and ancient power of chaos to break through the mythical limit. After all, he clearly felt that his potential had reached the upper limit, and it was almost impossible to break through. It was a pity that in the end, he was crazily devoured and became a chaos prisoner. Hundreds of years of imprisonment had completely wiped out his thoughts of escaping. He accepted the identity of a prisoner and even slowly adapted to a set of survival rules. The coral tentacles derived from the conch could already perform contact perception. Although the range was limited and the sensitivity was not high, at least it could give him a means of detection. If he sensed danger, he could avoid it in time. If he sensed other weak prisoners, he could get a delicious and sumptuous lunch, allowing him to live longer. At present, he was slowly approaching Han Dong's position. The coral tentacles growing from the conch were also swaying in the air. However, both sides did not know that they were about to encounter an unexpected encounter. For the prisoner who had not eaten for several years, once he could capture and perceive Han Dong, a weakling who had not even reached the mythical level, he would fall into a state of extreme excitement. He would bind Han Dong as if he had obtained a treasure. Eating a small piece every day would ensure his own nutritional supplement for a long time, and it could also satisfy the strong appetite that he had lost. 3 meters. 2 meters. 1 meter. He had entered the range of the coral tentacles. But Han Dong, who was immersed in his thoughts, was not aware of the upcoming danger at all. Smack! One of them happened to fall on Han Dong's shoulder. The desire that should have erupted and the battle that broke out in an instant did not happen. The scene was unexpectedly quiet. Even the deep-sea prisoner with the conch on his back stopped. He tilted his head slightly, looking very puzzled. The coral tentacles had clearly touched a foreign object. But strangely, the foreign object's perception that was transmitted back was himself. Immediately after, several coral tentacles stuck to it. Whether it was the head, shoulder, or torso that touched the foreign object, the feedback was all the same. They were all himself. He really could not figure it out. Why did himself appear in front of him? At this moment, Han Dong was in a strange state of thinking. He did not seem to notice the situation outside at all. Humans, hybrid demons, or different races in the destiny space. Or it could be further subdivided, such as schooners and black goat. Or it could be classified according to the area they were in. Prisoners of chaos, London residents, or knights of the holy city imprisoned here. All of these were just concepts that were defined to facilitate classification and cognition between individuals. What am I? There was no fixed answer to this question from the beginning, or the only answer was in his heart. I am myself. I can also be anything. Faceless is faceless. Faceless is all forms. This is the answer, this is the original me. Han Dong, who had figured all this out, changed his sitting posture that had not changed for several days and slowly got up. Such a change in behavior was regarded as a danger signal by the deep-sea prisoner. Although he still could not understand why the information identified by the individual in front of him was exactly the same as his, but considering the danger, he still launched an attack. Just as the coral tentacles were trying to tighten and release a kind of deep-sea pressure, Han Dong instinctively floated and turned his body, avoiding the entanglement of every tentacle like a fluid, smooth as silk. At the same time, a terrifying faceless face also turned and stared at the enemy who was trying to attack him. Chapter 1709. Although Han Dong hadn't completely found the answer to faceless. However, these days of self-thinking, in addition to bringing Han Dong closer to the final answer, it also gave him a special feeling. The shackles of restrictions on his body had been opened. To be exact, the restrictions from human nature had completely disappeared with the recognition of the self. Since he was promoted to World S01 and chose the faceless head, in the prison, Han Dong no longer defined himself as any kind of species. Formless is everything. If Han Dong hadn't limited himself to a human from the very beginning, according to the characteristics of the faceless head, he would have had thousands of identities. Even if he wasn't introduced into the holy city by the Night Squad at that time, according to the characteristics of the head, he could also survive in the area outside the city. He could even go to the hybrid demon town and get a different growth and development. Of course, Han Dong would still prefer to go to a human city. Not to mention that it would be easier to socialize with humans, the most important thing was that the fate system would be more suitable for him. When Han Dong completed the recognition of the self, the faceless head automatically released a colorless and invisible domain that even spiritual power couldn't capture. Formless domain. It was different from the yellow sand domain or the crazy laughter domain. The formless domain neither carried out reality intervention nor had any impact on the environment. The main function was range mimicry. Even if Han Dong didn't give the imitation order on a subjective level, the head would also adapt to the information collected by the formless domain, allowing the main body to integrate with the environment. This was actually somewhat similar to the face of the Grey Walker. Looking at the Grey Walker from different angles, different times, and different spaces, one would get different facial feedback. It seemed to be a similar principle. Of course, if Han Dong intervened subjectively, all kinds of unexpected changes could be carried out. Formless domain. This was also the reason why the Han Dong that the deep-sea prisoner perceived was himself. In the formless state, the highly adaptable black vortex torso was also affected. Even if Han Dong, the main body, didn't control it, under the influence of the formless domain, the torso could still adapt to the environment. The moment he felt threatened, he immediately twisted his body to the most optimal angle and used the floating corpse internal classic to reduce force. His entire body was like a slime. His body was flexible and quickly turned, avoiding the attacks of the coral tentacles at the best angle and slipping out of the attack range. All of this was achieved under the influence of the formless domain. Han Dong was still immersed in the realization of his self and the changes in his body. He did not know that he had been attacked. This feeling is too great. The faceless one's head and the black vortex torso could be perfectly linked together. It achieved a perfect adaptive mimicry. The G-virus support of the body's foundation has already given me extraordinary physical fitness and reflexes, which can also allow this kind of self-adaptation to achieve the best effect. I seem to have understood some of the true meaning of faceless. If he continued to wander in this state, he would definitely be able to obtain the final answer. Speaking of which, I have already grasped 3 types of domains, which correspond to the 3 main paths of my attack. When it comes to the construction of myths, these domains should also integrate on their own, right? I don't know what the mythical realm will look like. The more Han Dong thought about it, the more excited he became. He was still immersed in his own world. A few more coral tentacles came. At the same time, many deep-sea formations were built around Han Dong. Different types of attacks such as whale swallowing, crab pincers, and so on attacked Han Dong one after another. The result was the same. The completely flexible body could always find a gap to dodge the attack with the most perfect route and posture. No matter how he dodged, the faceless face was always watching the prisoner, vaguely revealing an invisible pressure. It made the unknown fear quickly proliferate and spread in the mind of the deep-sea prisoner. Although all senses had been completely sealed, the invisible pressure condensed into a faceless face in the mind of the deep-sea prisoner. In an instant, the accumulated fear broke through the limit. Whoosh! Sea-like body fluid sprayed out from the prisoner's private parts and the conch, leaking to the ground. The will to fight and the desire to eat were completely erased. The sponge-like swollen body became thin and delicate due to the release of a large amount of body fluid. Whoosh! The prisoner retracted into the conch on his back at the fastest speed. Using the 8 coral tentacles as legs, he quickly retreated in the opposite direction. Because there was no follow-up attack. Han Dong was stunned on the spot like a wooden man, and the faceless head was also motionless. After about 10 minutes, Han Dong completely left the state of enlightenment and let his mind return to his body. By the way, was someone attacking me just now? Could it be that I accidentally met a chaos prisoner while I was comprehending? Where did this guy go? Han Dong felt a little regretful. If the other party was still here, he might be able to solve the recent food problem. A seafood feast would be indispensable. While this feeling hasn't been lost, I'll continue to wander. If I can get some food, I can consider going deeper. Faceless Han Dong continued to wander aimlessly. Compared to the discomfort, concerns, and slight fear when he first came here, Han Dong had completely adapted to it. He was even infatuated with this prison area. He was unwilling to leave before he found the final answer. For some reason, even though the head of the braised egg had no facial features, one could vaguely see a very relieved and slightly excited smile. Half a year was quite short for the hybrid demons, but many things had happened in this half a year. Because Han Dong had buried a fuse in Misu in advance, a warning about the Black Tower and the multiverse that something big was about to happen had been acknowledged by the upper echelons of Misu. This matter had also slowly spread to the ears of every teacher and student in the school. Due to the importance, concentration, and diversity of Misu, this made the matter spread like a virus across the universe. Many of the old kings were even discussing it in private. Whether World S-01 chose to cooperate with the Black Tower for benefits, or not at all, this matter could eventually threaten World S-01 itself. According to the information provided by Han Dong, the final impact could be equal or even greater than the previous world cataclysm. Therefore, the old kings and the hybrid demons under their command began to have concerns, and all kinds of actions and plans were brought forward. Even some of the middle and upper Wangdu tried to question the existence in the void. The speed of the world gear was gradually increasing. But the final conclusion still needed to wait until Han Dong became a mythical body and went to the Black Tower, a shelter, to confirm this matter and clarify more details. Chapter 1710. Chaos Imperial Court. Trial Field 0. Grimm, as the first prime and a direct descendant recognized by his father, enjoyed the right to use the highest trial field. Grimm could enjoy all kinds of resources in the chaos unconditionally, which was why he spent most of his time in the center of chaos. Unless he encountered something particularly interesting or received special arrangements from his father, he would only go to the outside world. The Ladybug game brought Grimm great gains and insight. The mythological scrolls also expanded a lot because of this, and he could even vaguely peek at the outline of the kingdom depicted in the scrolls. After escaping from the Destiny space, Grimm had been imprisoned in the bottom of the abyss, absorbing and digesting the gains brought by Destiny in the midst of endless madness. Although meeting Han Dong was a very happy thing, and he could officially start on the crazy complement plan, it was still not the end. However, if Han Dong needed to grow under the guidance of the Grey Walker for a period of time, Grimm would not force him to do anything. He could take advantage of this half-year gap to go to the Field 0. Through crazy battles, he could transform his insights into something more tangible. For a whole half-year Grimm stayed in the Field 0, and he was about to break the record for the longest time since ancient times. The rules here were simple. The Field 0 would randomly generate different types of opponents according to the attributes of the trial taker. Every time an opponent was defeated, a corresponding rest time would be given according to the battle time. The longer the battle, the less rest time the reward would be. The opponent generated in the next round would be stronger. Because of this rule, even if one came to the Field 0, they were all strong. In the end, they would be forced to end the trial because their attributes were different, they did not have enough rest time, their stamina was insufficient, or their injuries did not get enough time to heal. The average time in the Field 0 was 26 days. Grimm had stayed in there for a full 181 days, and there were still no signs of him leaving. In the trial field built with Chaos Stone, a life shrouded in a cloak was constantly dripping with silver liquid, and Grimm's right arm was inserted into its body through the hood, dispersing, tearing, and then completely killing it through the abyss internal devour. This trial took more than 2 days, and it was over. This meant that Grimm would not have any time to rest. He would not even have time to force out the silver stains that had seeped into his soul, and he would enter the next trial. A gray substance in the form of a flowing form quickly covered the entire field. Such a familiar feeling made Grimm's whole body tremble, and the holes in his pupils rapidly enlarged. Could this be a hidden checkpoint? The special treatment of passing 200 trials in half a year? The 0 trial ground could even simulate such a character? It was no wonder. After all, Naya had once stayed in the 0 training ground for a total of 200 days. The trial field must have collected the data of his body and used the endless resources of chaos to create an imitation. That was great. That's awesome. This sudden stimulation caused his entire body to tremble. He even stuck his finger into the hole near his temple and forcibly pulled out the silver stain in his soul. In Grimm's mind, he had wanted to fight this gray being for the umpteenth time. This was because the other party was born in the early days of the world and was now a superior existence. Due to the huge difference in level, there was no way to fight normally. This was also a regret in Grimm's heart. Now was the perfect opportunity. In Glenn's understanding, the Grey Walker that appeared in the 0 arena should be in an early stage of training. It was completely capable of carrying out a contest of the same level. However, Grimm held Miss Lyle in one hand and gathered the characteristics of the abyss in the other. With the help of endless madness, he suppressed his fatigue and injuries and launched a fierce attack with all his strength. However, he felt a trace of something wrong. Moreover, this kind of abnormality continued to increase as time passed. Why can't I hit it? It's not just Miss Lyle's problem, it's more of my problem. Why can't I catch it even when I gather the devouring effect of all things in the abyss? Was this guy always this strong? The madness that burned on the surface of his body burned more and more because he could not hit the target. Grimm's domain that he released filled the zero training ground with holes. These holes began to move according to Grimm's mood changes. They fused with each other, forming a wider abyss with a stronger effect. Slowly, more and more abyss converged with each other, almost achieving the final unification, building an ultimate abyss that could perfectly cover the trial field. Grimm was almost burned out, his body was between collapse and death. The moment the ultimate abyss was formed, a gray palm fell on his shoulder, and the power that surpassed mythical instantly suppressed the crazy endless release and burning. At the same time, it forcefully erased the newly formed crazy abyss. The purpose of this was to let Grimm break through actual combat while minimizing the burden on his body. Very strong, Christopher J. Grimm. If I didn't forcefully intervene in your trial with your condition, you might be able to break the original record of the zero training ground. Ha ha ha. I was wondering why something was wrong, it's actually me. Even though Grimm was extremely weak, he was still laughing out loud due to excitement. Every time he laughed, a small piece of his body would peel off. Congratulations on another breakthrough. The reason why I forcefully intervened was because of the agreement I made with you half a year ago. At that time, you were forbidden to follow Nicholas to the Chaos Cell. Now, the time has come. Nicholas's special training will also end here. Do you want to come with me to get him out? Of course, Grimm did not care at all that the trial was forcefully terminated. He did not care about breaking the record at all. He did not care about the injuries on his body and the endless fatigue that almost made him faint. Anyway, there was still some time before he went to the Chaos Cell. As long as this was the center of chaos, Grimm would have endless nutrition and resources. Can you keep up with the current you? Do you want to rest for a day before going? I'm already resting now. Let's go, Lord Naya. Grimm showed an evil expression of extreme desire. The holes on his body maintained a state of suction, absorbing the chaotic breath in the environment with the highest efficiency. Just as Grey Tread left, Grimm immediately followed at a fast speed. While falling into the abyss, in addition to sucking on the chaotic fluid that was constantly flowing into Grimm's body, he was also holding a cup of perfectly concentrated worm brain juice in his hand. Every sip could quickly replenish the brain's depleted energy, equivalent to 10 hours of deep sleep. Lord Naya. By the way, which level of the prison did you throw Nicholas into for special training? If he goes beyond the middle level, with his current level, won't his life be in great danger? Even I can't guarantee that I can stay there for half a year. The feeling of absolute isolation is really terrible. I just threw him on the surface level and explained to him the relationship between the umbilical cord and the depth. As for how deep he goes, it's his choice. According to Nicholas's adaptability, I think he'll stay at the upper middle level. When the two arrived at the entrance of the prison, Mr. Fogg also condensed his original form and followed them into the prison. With his presence, it was easier to escape from the deeper level. However, everyone followed the umbilical cord and quickly searched every level of the mist, but they could not find Han Dong's presence. They had gone past the middle level. Mr. Fogg was puzzled. What happened? His current level can't go past the middle level. Is he dead? Grey Walker shook his head. The connection between us is not broken. He should be in a deeper area. Let's go deeper. Chapter 1711. Chaos Cell, the end of the middle layer. Even the small pores on Grimm's body were oozing out a fluid similar to sweat. At this depth, they still could not find Han Dong. The situation was not right. The prisoners wandering around the current depth were all at the peak of the mythical level. At the same time, there were also strong and crazy powerhouses. Moreover, they had stayed in the Chaos Cell for a long time. They had developed adaptive means to deal with the sensory blockage. Compared to outsiders, they had a greater geographical advantage. Even Grimm would be in danger. At this time, Mr. Fogg condensed a serious face in his glass jar head. Further down is the deep layer cell. Although there are only a dozen prisoners down there, each of them is at the level of a regent. They can use the regent's territory to effectively resist the blockage of the cell's senses. At least they can maintain normal senses within a 10-meter radius. If Nicholas is down there, he will definitely die. Not to mention that half a year has passed. Gray, is it possible that the same feeling you felt is the feeling that Nicholas has been completely absorbed or enslaved? The Gray Walker said with a normal face. Let's continue down. Whether he is dead or alive, we have to verify it, right? Maybe something interesting will happen. They continued down. The umbilical cord connecting the layers had turned black. There was even the mark of a goat mother on the surface. It was even more restrictive. The deep layer cell was slightly different from the ones above. There were no longer small layers here. Instead, it was a large space connected to the bottom of the abyss. In addition to the usual cell building materials, it also used the chaos tentacles from the highest to ensure that the old king, who was imprisoned here, could not escape. When the fog began to spread in this layer, Mr. Fogg's glass jar head condensed a shocked expression. It seemed to have captured Nicholas's movements in this layer, but it also seemed like it did not completely capture him. What is this situation? It was Grimm's first time encountering something that could make Mr. Fogg show such an expression of incomprehension. The Grey Walker asked, Fogg, did you capture Nicholas? What's the situation? He shouldn't be controlled or turned into a slave, right? Follow me. I can't determine Nicholas's specific situation with just the information sent back by the fog. I have never seen anything like what is happening here. When everyone followed their senses through the fog and found an area, they saw a group of people. Pa pa pa. The sound of flesh hitting flesh could be heard continuously. At the same time, a large amount of crazy aura was born. Even Glenn became curious and was eager to go up and check out the situation. Before your eyes, the prisoners who were supposed to be scattered in different areas were all gathered here. Not only were they not in a mess, they even formed a neat circle. Their eyes were filled with novelty, madness, and excitement. A different kind of emotion filled their consciousness, suppressing the negative desires of brutality, cruelty, and so on. Within the circle formed by the prisoners, there was a special 1v1 combat match going on. Both sides gave up on their abilities, items, techniques, and other external aspects. Only through the most primitive and crazy instincts, they carried out the purest physical combat. One of the fighters was Nicholas. Although his opponent was at the level of a king, he was still able to defeat a king. Because he had given up on everything external, even king-class domains and mental pressure, there wasn't much of a difference between the two. The most important point was, Han Dong was quite experienced when it came to fighting. He had won the title of monthly most wretched many times in the Black Tower. As a result, although the two of them seemed to be on par, in reality, Han Dong was the one who dealt more effective blows. Another thing to pay attention to was Han Dong's state. The Han Dong here was no longer in the form of a human. Instead, he was faceless, with his arms hanging in front of his body. Every minute and every second, he was adapting to his opponent's mode, gradually perfecting a kind of invisible state that could almost avoid all the damage caused by the combat. The dull and pure sound of flesh hitting flesh continued to spread in the abyss. Every time the combatants effectively hit each other, the onlookers would burst into fierce cheers, and the most primitive desire in their bodies would be aroused. The crazy aura released by everyone was under the influence of the combat, faintly forming an abyss combat field, constantly stimulating and fermenting the madness in everyone's body. What the hell is this? Mr. Fogg's incarnation in a bottle had been the guardian of the Chaos Cell for thousands of years, and he had never encountered such a situation. So now, he was eager to know why the deep prison had become like this. Snap! An arm condensed by mist stretched out from the cloak and caught the nearest onlooker. Gurgle gurgle, the condensed liquid mist quickly drilled into the prisoner's cranial cavity through the holes on his face. After a series of infiltration and transcription, the mist of the brain's memory seeped out from the prisoner's skull and constructed memory images in the sky, showing the memories and experiences of this period of time. About a month and a half ago, Han Dong, the Faceless, came to the deep prison in a state of ethereal, completely integrated with the environment. Just as Han Dong, as a newcomer, was being watched by many prisoners, he suddenly made a series of strange moves. In the absence of an opponent, Han Dong began to hit himself. At first glance, it looked stupid, but after careful observation, it was not self-abuse. Han Dong immersed himself in the fight. The skills, experience, and purity that he had been learning in the Fight Club were all integrated into his own formless state. He identified himself as an opponent and carried out a very high level of self-fight. Some of the prisoners who observed carefully could vaguely see that the two young men were carrying out a very high level of fighting each other. As the self-fight progressed, a wave of madness that the prisoners had never tasted spread out and slowly attracted them. Instead of eating the newcomer, it was better. They wanted to have this kind of fight that they had never experienced before. As one of them joined, more and more prisoners joined in. They began to fight at a fixed time every day. Whether it was observation or personal experience, it made the boring prison life interesting. Moreover, in this kind of fight, they could feel that their bodies were undergoing subtle changes, and the long-lost sense of growth seemed to have returned. The estrangement between them was gradually dispelled because of the fists that met flesh. Some prisoners who were good at healing even took the initiative to take on medical work, treating everyone as a group, as a fight club. "Nicholas, this guy is quite good." After Mr. Fogg understood the incident, he gave a very high evaluation. The Grey Walker silently watched everything in front of him, and a satisfied smile appeared on his face. Grim, who was supposed to be by his side, had already squeezed into the crowd. With the end of the previous fight, Grim took the initiative to apply for the next fight. Although this was against the rules, there were many prisoners here who knew Grim's identity, and they also sensed that the two big bosses were standing outside. At the same time, as the founder, Han Dong did not refuse, and watched Grim with his faceless face. "Come on, Nicholas. I have basically not rested for half a year, and I have been continuously engaged in high-intensity battles. My state should be similar to yours. Let me try this most primitive physical impact." Chapter 17:12. Drip, 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 the viscous liquid filled with essence dripped from a beehive-shaped faucet. Han Dong woke up in the familiar bathtub. However, when he woke up this time, he maintained his faceless form, not his human form. The fatigue still accumulated in his body. The only thing that was eliminated was the sleepiness. He couldn't even lift his arm out of the water. He could only lean on the bathtub quietly. His thoughts were still a little chaotic. Most of the memories of half a year had become a little blurry and intermittent. Especially when he went to the deep prison because of the deep fighting, he was injured and repaired again and again. Han Dong's thoughts also became invisible along with his body, causing the subsequent memories to be quite vague. For the memories of the last period, he only remembered that Mr. Fogg and the Grey Walker came to the deepest level together, and at the same time Grim came with them. The last fight seemed to have Grim's personal involvement. The detailed process and the final outcome of the fight had disappeared, but Han Dong could roughly guess that he had lost. After that, his body was wrapped in a gentle and nourishing mist, and he left the prison. The prisoners locked in the deeper levels said their goodbyes one by one in different ways. Some even had tears in their eyes. They were very grateful to Han Dong for bringing them such an interesting way of entertainment that allowed them to break through the shackles of their shackles. When he thought of this, Han Dong recovered a little of his physical strength. He put his arms on both sides of the bathtub in a state of trembling. Emotions surged up, the corner of his mouth was torn open, and the blood that flowed out quickly dyed the outer layer of his mouth red. In order not to affect the search for the answer of what is faceless, the crazy laughter that had been suppressed for half a year could finally pour out without restraint. The extremely crazy laughter filled the bathroom, and even spread to Grimm's entire bedroom. The Tindalos hound that was sleeping in the kennel was frightened by the laughter, and temporarily used the teleportation array between the balconies to return to the mother planet. Grimm was currently not in the room when the crazy laughter ended. The bathtub that Han Dong was lying in was completely dyed red, and even the walls of the bathroom were printed with smiling faces. Sure enough, my idea was right. The prisoners who had been caged in the deeper levels and swallowed by madness were also in a state of extreme boredom and unvented desires. This was especially true when it came to their most primitive and crazy desires. It was simply impossible to satisfy them. Each and every one of them thirsted for it like starving people. What I needed to do was to give them a completely different and satisfying way of getting and venting. There was nothing better than the way I learned from the Fight Club. To a certain extent, the guys in the club were also a bunch of lunatics. Copying their model would work perfectly here. Because of this, I was given an opportunity that was almost impossible to obtain. He engaged in the most primitive hand-to-hand combat with this group of king-level prisoners who were crazily devoured. Through the formless domain, he simulated, learned, and absorbed the chaos attribute of this group of prisoners at the bottom. After pushing myself to the limit again and again, I have found the final answer. The camera zoomed in on Han Dong's abyss of consciousness. On the surface of the abyss stone tablet, the outline of the third puzzle piece was printed. Compared to the previous two pieces, it was much simpler. From the outline, it should be a face. However, the specific pattern would have to wait until the final puzzle was constructed. Han Dong had only found the answer to what is faceless, and there was still a gap between him and the real faceless. However, in the past 6 months, he had found the feeling, wandering, and fighting. The direction was clear. As long as the opportunity came, Han Dong believed that he would be able to seize it and construct the final puzzle. Speaking of which, the group of guys in the Chaos Cell is quite interesting. They are also a group of quite powerful combat forces, but they are all mentally abnormal and can't effectively control the madness. If there is a chance in the future, I can try to put forward conditions to the center of chaos and transfer this group of prisoners to my prison. When I grow into a mythical body, I should be able to further expand the scale of the prison. As long as I follow the Fight Club system, I can control them very well. If the Black Tower incident completely breaks out and affects us, the combat power of this group of guys is indispensable. In any case, this journey of imprisonment is really fruitful. I must thank Senior Gray in person. Just as Han Dong was immersed in the joy of the harvest and leaned against the bathtub to rest. Click, there was a sound of a door lock outside. Is Green back? No, he is deliberately lowering his footstep. This is not Green's style. After a while, the bathroom door was gently pushed open a gap. Sally's half-head quietly poked in. She was startled by the smiling faces in the bathroom, but she tried not to make a sound for fear of disturbing Han Dong, who was resting. Sally, why are you here? Ah, you're awake. Seeing this, Black Goat immediately stepped in. Leaning sideways against the bathroom door, she also locked the door. A forked finger was in her mouth, and the sound of Sally sucking her finger could be heard in the silent bathroom. Compared to Sally, who used to be more conservative, and would even cover part of her face with a black veil, there was an obvious change. She was only wearing a chest-wrapping top. On the exposed, slender waist, there was a special article that symbolized fertility, and there was even a trace of purple smoke between the lines. The dense hair growing between the goat's long legs formed a pure natural black stocking through the regular and precise weave. The next second, one of the legs had already stepped into the bathtub, and the stocking was completely soaked. Immediately after, Sally stepped into the bathtub and sat directly opposite Han Dong. The long wet black leg gently rested on Han Dong's body, and the tentacle-like hair drilled into Han Dong's pores in the most gentle form, checking his physical condition and healing his injuries as much as possible. It's been half a year. You didn't even tell me when you left. I've been undergoing special training in the Imperial Court, and I've been eroded and assimilated by the chaos every day. I've endured alone for half a year. You have to accompany me this time. Seeing that Han Dong did not explicitly refuse, she took the initiative to force herself on. Who knew? Just as Sally straddled Han Dong's body, Sally's eyes lit up. Click, there was a sound of the door from outside, and at the same time, a strong aura of madness attacked. An instinctive pressure instantly made Sally dispel the idea, but the bathroom was only so small, and she didn't know where to hide. If it was a normal time, Han Dong would definitely put Sally in the brain prison, but now even raising his hand was a problem, let alone using his ability. Click. When Grimm forced the bathroom door open, he glanced at the smiley face imprints all over the bathroom, and finally looked at Han Dong, who had woken up in the bathtub. Are you awake? You slept for so long. It seems that you've been suppressed in the Abyss prison for too long, and this special crazy laughter can't be released? It's good that you're fine. I was really afraid of leaving you with injuries that are difficult to heal, or else the party trip will have to be postponed again. I still have something to do. You continue to rest. In fact, Grimm's injuries had not fully recovered, and he was undergoing acupuncture in a special secret room. There were some problems with his body in all aspects, so much so that under the influence of crazy laughter, he did not smell the mutton smell in the air. It was only because the hole left on Han Dong's body responded that he came back to check on the situation. As Grimm left, Sally, who was curled up and hidden under Han Dong's crotch, slowly raised her head, revealing a very silly and cute expression. Chapter 17:13. Gurgle gurgle. After making sure that Grimm had completely left, only then did Sally slowly poke her head out of the water. She seemed to have encountered several puzzling questions while diving into the bathtub just now. First, she was so innocent that she was hiding in the bathtub without being discovered by Grimm. Not to mention that she had been abstinent for half a year, so that the entire bathroom was mixed with her fertility smell, and even the bathtub was mixed with the amniotic fluid that had just flowed out due to stimulation. Although the crazy laughter that pervaded the current area could obscure perception, it was not to the extent that she would not be discovered. Sally dived into the bathtub and observed Han Dong's body from almost zero distance. In addition to the aging brought by the chaos, and Han Dong's original state after recognizing himself, Sally also noticed a rather strange change. Surprisingly, Han Dong's body was able to adapt and dodge her attacks as she approached him. From time to time, it would contract, twist, or undergo ultra-rapid soft deformation. Every time Sally wanted to catch it, it would always be dodged at the last moment. "Sally, what's wrong?" Grimm seemed to be very out of it just now. "He didn't even notice me, and your body has changed a lot. How can it move by itself? Invisible. My body, without the control of subjective consciousness, can react ultra-quickly to the changes in the surrounding environment." I don't seem to have seen it before. Did you learn it in the past 6 months? This ability seems to be very similar to the Lord Walker. The impression that the Lord Walker gives us is that we can't capture or see his true appearance. His footprints are left everywhere in the universe. Well, the last mythical puzzle is related to the faceless. However, the mythical system I constructed should be different from the Walkers. At present, the overall outline has been reflected on the surface of the stone tablet. I hope the final puzzle structure can be completed in the center of chaos. Sigh, but I don't know how long it will take for my body to return to normal. It was too crazy down there. Hearing this, Sally stretched out a finger and gently drew circles on Han Dong's chest. It's okay, leave the problem of your body to me. Although I'm not as good at healing as Sister Kuji, I still learned a lot from her. After a series of examinations just now, your organ damage is quite serious. I have improved a lot recently under the influence of chaos. I should be able to create a perfect set of organs for you. You just need to replace them. Come on, let's create an organ. Sally pointed at the coat of arms on her abdomen. Give it a try. Han Dong knew that his body was quite special, and he was also very curious about whether Sally's characteristics could allow him to create perfect organs. It would be great if it could speed up his body's recovery. After all, time was of the essence. Thus, a series of strange noises began to sound in the bathroom. The two of them stayed in the bathroom for an entire week. During this time, when Grimm's Tindaro's hound returned from the mother planet, it immediately smelled a strong scent of fresh meat coming from the bathroom. This smell was much more advanced than most of the food it had eaten. Moreover, it was something new that it had never tasted before. For a moment, he was so hungry that the spikes all over his body were secreting saliva. However, due to the fear of death, it still did not dare to approach the bathroom area. He had no choice but to quietly stick out a long, thin tongue that had a visual function and slowly stick to the bathroom like a snake. Just as he carefully pushed open the unlocked bathroom door. Before your eyes, the visual scene captured by the tongue shocked the Tindaro's hound greatly. For a moment, he thought that his eyes were playing tricks on him, and he kept shaking his head. The entire bathroom, squirming organs were piled up on the ground. Even the walls were filled with all kinds of deformed and twisted organs. It was a complete organ house. Although the quality of these organs was very high, they were not up to the standard of replacement, so they could only be temporarily thrown here. Such a beautiful scene really made the hound hungry. One had to know that every organ was extremely fresh, and even mixed with mythical aura. Just as it was hesitating whether to take the risk to eat, Sally, who was absolutely satisfied in the bathtub, gave a friendly look. It just so happens that there's no place to deal with these organs. You can eat as much as you want. The hound that received permission barked twice in excitement. Then it began to eat crazily, and even packed the organs that it could not finish into its own kennel, and wrapped them with a special saliva film to preserve them. After this exchange, Han Dong's organ damage caused by the fight had been repaired. The organs that Sally gave birth to were not just a simple replacement, but a complete gestation on the soul level. Such an ability was quite abnormal, and it could even achieve an impossible reversal in some desperate situations. Of course, the efficiency of the perfect replacement was not high enough. Just from this week of gestation, the organ success rate was less than 1%. It still needed a deeper exchange between the two of them and Sally's own improvement. For Sally, this week of exchange not only satisfied her needs, but her mastery of gestation had also improved. Even because of the deep physical contact, and the multiple sampling and organ filling in Han Dong's body allowed Sally to absorb some of the attributes of the black vortex. Ah, it's so comfortable. I really want to stay like this forever. Sally stretched her back. She changed into a familiar coat and covered her face with a black veil. After all, she was already satisfied. Her appearance and the attributes of the black goat could easily cause trouble in the chaos, so it was better to suppress it. Wow! Han Dong tried to slowly step out of the bathtub, and his bodily functions had basically recovered. It feels so good to be able to move freely. I thought it would take at least a month of rest. It seems that Grimm's injuries are not light. He hasn't returned during this period of time. He should be undergoing body treatment in a specific area. Let's go find him. It's about time to see the so-called abyss party. Han Dong walked out of the bathroom with Sally's help. The Tindalos hound that lived on the balcony suddenly pounced on Sally and licked her leg of lamb. It seemed to like the black goat that fed it. Sally also leaned over happily and touched the soft spikes on its back. When Han Dong saw the hound, he suddenly remembered something. Sally, wait for me for a moment. There's still a brain matter that I have to deal with. Okay, you go ahead. When Han Dong's consciousness went into the skull, his ownerless body rested on Sally's thigh. Count hasn't contacted me during this period of time. He didn't even take the initiative to appear during the combat segment. It's obviously not normal. Could it be that something big happened? Han Dong wondered if Count had been counterattacked by the demonic book. After all, the Mysterious Lord's 7 chapters was extremely unstable. When he came to the space of consciousness, the environment here didn't change much. The skull fruit on the talent tree was faintly laughing, and the cemetery was filled with a strong death aura. When Han Dong quickly stepped into the Taoist temple, the scene in front of him surprised him. Count, who was supposed to be sitting in the depths and reading, and the demonic book placed on the ground were nowhere to be seen. There was only a swollen red blood ball floating in the air. The Master of the Blood Oath, Roghorn's dark blood skull, was floating on the surface of the blood ball, emitting bursts of red light. It was a seal structure that maintained the stability of the blood ball and isolated all external disturbances. Count seems to have entered a special state. Not bad. Chapter 1714. Both Bop and Eugenius paid a great price when they learned the demonic book. Both their physical and spiritual attributes changed because of the demonic book. Eugenius created the corpse food cult in his body, combined with the black mountain of flesh that could be freely retracted, and even built a unique inner world. His future development is immeasurable. He will definitely surpass M.O. and reach a higher level of achievement. Bop, on the other hand, was connected to an evil star that was completely isolated from the main world and added a brand new attribute to it on the soul level. It was even possible that in the end, he would completely control this rejected evil star and keep it in the star brain. If Count wanted to learn the demonic book, he would have to go through a different experience. If he used to have a blood wine constitution, he would definitely not be able to bear it. Now it was completely different. Whether it was the dark blood constitution or the holy sword attributes in his body, it would definitely allow Count to slowly contend with the demonic book and find a balance point to control it. I wonder how Count will look when he finally breaks out of the blood sphere. I'm looking forward to it. Since he had confirmed that Count was fine, he could leave with peace of mind. Just as Han Dong stepped out of the Taoist temple, he suddenly caught a glimpse of a young man in a crow's robe standing under a tree. But when he looked carefully, there was no one under the tree. What happened just now? Wasn't that me? Due to his understanding of the ID, Han Dong's appearance when he came to the space of consciousness was still faceless, which was a sharp contrast to the human he had caught a glimpse of just now. It can't be wrong. The individual that appeared under the tree in an instant should have some special meaning. Perhaps the understanding related to faceless can reach a deeper level. Or rather, the human ID I just glimpsed is related to the current changes in my body. After all, the formation of the first 2 pieces of the mythical puzzle brought a great impact and change to the space of consciousness that symbolized the system. The mythical puzzle corresponding to faceless may bring about a different kind of change to the space of consciousness. Han Dong stopped thinking about meaningless things and returned his consciousness to his body. Sally, let's go. Let's go find Grim. Just as Han Dong mentioned the word Grim, the well-behaved Tindalos hound that was lying by Sally's feet immediately raised its head. Strange sounds could be heard from the vibrations between the teeth and tongues. Are you looking for Master? Follow me. Master should be undergoing a special abyssal treatment in the spore abyss. Bribed with food, the hound became unusually obedient, especially when it came to Sally's direct orders. Just like that, the two of them followed the hounds as they walked through the corridors of the Royal Court of Chaos. The aisle of the Royal Court had a closed structure. The walls made of chaos stone were covered with holes of various sizes. The top of the walls were also engraved with corresponding ancient numbers. Han Dong could not understand the meaning behind them. Each hole corresponded to a different crazy abyss: main abyss, child abyss, branch abyss, independent abyss, etc. While leading the way, Han Dong asked curiously, "What does abyss healing mean?" Master's abyssal structure requires regular maintenance and maintenance. Only the center of chaos has this function. This time, Master seems to have suffered a different type of injury. Whether it is external or internal injuries, he needs to consume an extremely high amount of chaos essence to repair. Master's physique is unique. It is impossible for there to be a second one in the entire Mantis demon world. In the future, he will become the ruler of this chaos. Therefore, we must not be careless in the maintenance and maintenance. When talking about Grim, the hound's eyes were filled with admiration. After a few turns, the hound jumped directly into a small hole on the side of the corridor. The other side was filled with fungus-like chaos spores. Each of them was about the size of a human body, and they kept floating up in the abyss. The reason for their formation was the extremely high concentration of chaos and the current characteristics of the abyss. Master is at the bottom, you guys go over. I still can't adapt to such a high concentration chaos environment, so I won't go down. Thank you again for the delicious food. The hound was very polite. After licking the lamb leg to express its gratitude, it directly used a self-devouring method to teleport away from the area. Han Dong touched the chaos fungi floating in the abyss. This was definitely not as simple as a high concentration. The physical chaos on the surface of these fungi had a rather exquisite internal structure. Compared to other abyss, this place was full of vitality. Sure enough, on this chaotic planet, each of the corresponding abysses had different attributes and characteristics. This abyss full of vitality in front of us is very suitable for Grim to recuperate. Let's go down and have a look. During the continuous fall, the density of the chaos spores kept increasing. There were even a few times when they hit the surface of the spores. If they were not careful, they would be surrounded by chaos. However, Han Dong's body was like a slime swimming between the spores, completely unaffected. When the two arrived at the bottom of the abyss, they were immediately shocked by the scene in front of them. At the bottom stood a soft, whisker-like body, similar to the fungal center of the world tree. After the rich chaotic matter was absorbed by it, through the form of flowering and fruiting, clusters of fungal spores were born from the branches. Once they matured, they would leave the main body and float up. Grim's body was embedded in the middle of the tree body. His body was full of tentacles from the main trunk of the tree body. The purest and most vital energy was transferred into Grim's body. Slender fungal roots were also performing maintenance on Grim's abyss body. Nicholas, you recovered so quickly? Grim was a little surprised. According to his estimation, Han Dong would have to lie in the bathroom for at least a month. I can barely move, it's all thanks to Sally's help. We came over to check on your condition, because I don't remember the last experience in the Chaos prison. I had to confirm your condition face to face, otherwise I would feel a little uncomfortable. As long as I'm in the center of chaos, even if I'm really killed, I can be resurrected. It's just a small injury. Speaking of which, that kind of pure physical collision was really exciting. I'll come again next time. Although the maintenance of the body was not done yet. Grim broke free from the restraint of the roots with brute force, pulled out the roots in his body, and forcibly interrupted the process. My body is almost done. Since you can move, I don't need to waste time here. I'll take you to the palace to enjoy a top-notch banquet. After that, we'll have a long fall along the main abyss. You can enjoy the abyss party. It has been delayed for half a year. With your current condition, you should be able to fit in perfectly at the party. Sally, come with us too. If you can't hold on during the journey, you can back out at any time. Chapter 17:15. The Supreme Being used the chaotic matter in the universe to create the chaos star, which was spread across tens of millions or even hundreds of millions of abysses. Every abyss had its own characteristics and was relatively independent. It could be classified according to size and depth. It could also be classified according to function. It could even be numbered according to the order of birth of the abyss with basic numbers. However, considering the convenience, the most commonly used classification method was to use the creation abyss, which was the first to be born, the largest, the deepest, and the only one that could reach the bottom of the abyss, as the main abyss. The creation abyss was not only connected to the Chaos Royal Court, but it was also the place of the low-level residents, and also the abyss party created by the Supreme Being. The abyss connected to the main abyss was called the child abyss. This type of abyss often had larger specifications, each with obvious characteristics, for example, the fungal abyss that could provide regular maintenance for Grimm. The abyss connected to the child abyss was also called the branch abyss, which was mostly functional or used for material storage, or for the rest of the Chaos tribe, or as a branch of the Chaos region. The abyss that was not connected to the above was called the independent abyss. These abyss often had not fully grown, or existed as a dead zone. Currently the three of them were falling down the huge main abyss. According to Grimm, the main abyss was extremely restrictive, and at the same time, it was also set by the Supreme Being, comparable to the origin law of the superworld. Any spatial means or rapid migration ability had no effect here. Even if Bop wanted to quickly go to the bottom through void migration, he would find that no matter how he teleported, the depth he was in would not change at all. If he wanted to go to the depths, falling was the only way forward. According to Grimm, even if he calculated from the depth of the Chaos Royal Court, it would take at least 20 days to fall to the bottom of the Abyss Party. Even Grimm, the child of the Abyss, only had the privilege of going directly to the Royal Court. If he wanted to continue, he still needed to fall in the conventional sense. In addition, during the fall, he could not just sleep casually. The Chaos Royal Court was probably located in the central area of the main abyss. If he continued to go down, he would be classified as the bottom area. The crazy concentration would rise in a straight line, eroding all aspects of the fallen. There were also all kinds of dangerous bottom residents living here. Some of them came from the Xia Enu city. For example, the insect lords who were called heroes were qualified to come here for the assessment. Once they passed, they could live in the lower areas. At the same time, there were also some crazy species born from the center of chaos, or foreign individuals who came to seek opportunities. Being able to become a bottom-level resident meant that they were powerful and had been recognized by the Abyss. Their actions were basically unrestrained, and they could attack fallen ones at any time. Han Dong's demonic I had already seen some of the existences hidden in the Abyss's rock walls. They were all at the mythical level and were very powerful. Even if they recognized Grimm's presence, they had no intention of retreating. However, Han Dong did not mind. He, who had transformed into a faceless person, had spread out his formless domain. Any attack from the outside world would be effectively adaptive. Moreover, because of Grimm's existence, most of the low-level residents did not dare to act rashly. While falling, Han Dong suddenly remembered something. By the way, Glenn, are there any requirements for the assessment? Why are you asking this? This kind of identity is not worthy of you at all. It's meaningless. It's not me. It's because when I went to Chaos, I recruited a very good servant in the slave city. Because of his unique eating characteristic and relatively high growth attribute, after precision eating, the corpse of a mythical Shane, he had completed atavism in my body not long ago. As far as I know, the total time for him to go from birth to maturity to atavism was only 3 years. Even Grimm was interested after hearing this. There's still a talent. Why didn't I hear anyone from the slave city of Shane? According to the current system of Shane, such a talent should be quickly reported to the center of chaos. Whether it's the person who reported it or the city lord, they would be rewarded. According to the talent you described, he will definitely be qualified to go to the abyss in advance. Han Dong explained simply. He was not a resident of the slave city, but a slave. If I didn't happen to find him, I'm afraid he would have starved to death. The servant that Han Dong had spoken highly of was none other than the ghoul from the slave market, Zombie Bang. After the mythical war in the heroic sanctuary, Zombie welcomed the special opportunity that Han Dong promised him, a complete corpse of a mythical Shane. He also lived up to Han Dong's expectations. With a mature body, he withstood the huge burden brought by the mythical corpse and achieved perfect digestion with the ghoul characteristic. When Han Dong wandered in the prison as a faceless one for half a year, Zombie also completed the gate opening in the prison world, and at the same time, evolved into a perfect ghoul under the guidance of Dr. Swollen. At this time, Han Dong directly released Corpse Puppet, and it fell with everyone. What appeared in front of everyone was a young man with a physique similar to that of a human, a strong body and shoulder-length black hair. There were 2 characteristics. 1. Influenced by the death aura, slightly dark colloidal skin. 2. A second mouth grew on the side left face. This was not as simple as organ proliferation. The secondary mouth was a structure that evolved when Zombie witnessed the truth in the gate opening. The main mouth was used for precision eating and nutrition screening. The secondary mouth was used to kill enemies, and a kind of truth-level bite was contained in it. Not bad. When Grimm looked at Zombie, he immediately spied on the difference and particularity. Moreover, there were very few atavistic physiques that he did not feel fear when he saw them. Zombie obviously had a very high level of awareness on a certain level. Atavism is indeed the lowest level requirement for the low-level residence assessment. Since it's a servant chosen by you, Nicholas, maybe he can pass. However, if the atavistic physique is to take the assessment, some places will be at a disadvantage. In case he is crazily devoured on the way and loses himself, just give him to me as a toy. I happen to have the resources to cultivate a crazy slave. No problem, Zombie, are you ready? As long as it's master's arrangement, I will obey. Zombie was able to have his current achievements because he had the opportunity to witness the truth. Everything was because of Han Dong. Coupled with his innate rationality, he had already regarded Han Dong as his true master and maintained his loyalty, no matter what. After about a day of falling, we will reach the assessment point. Just let him adapt to the crazy density first. If he can't survive here, the assessment will be meaningless. Grimm was also slightly interested. After a day of falling, everyone landed on a platform. Abyss Shane, who was in charge of the assessment, immediately attached his front body to the ground to express his respect for Grimm. After learning the requirements, he immediately arranged the resident assessment for Zombie as quickly as possible. Chapter 1716. As Grimm personally explained the situation, many basic steps were directly skipped. A late-stage mythical Shane in charge directly led Zombie to the assessment area inside the rock layer. Because Zombie belonged to the atavistic body, some of the assessments also needed to be lowered in difficulty. The whole process would take at least 2 days. Of course, Han Dong had no intention of waiting for the result. When he returned from the Abyss party, he would naturally be able to verify the assessment results. If Zombie successfully passed the assessment, Han Dong would keep it for himself. If not, he would give it to Grimm as a gift. No matter what, it would not be a loss. When the three of them walked out of the assessment platform and continued to fall into the abyss, the holes between Grimm's pupils contracted slightly. He put one hand on Han Dong's shoulder and closed the distance between the two. More than half of their bodies were pressed together. A slippery tongue stuck to Han Dong's cheek and cruised to the position of his ear hole. They whispered in this way. "Nicholas, have you been planning this for a long time? I seem to remember that you specialize in ghouls." Moreover, after the project about ghouls was displayed in the London game room, it was very valued by the guys above. This time, arranging for ghouls to participate in the lower-level resident assessment should also be one of your research projects, right? Haha, have I been seen through? Han Dong scratched his head a little embarrassedly, but he did not hide it. In fact, Han Dong's intention was very obvious. When he discovered the special ghoul, Zombie, in the slave market, he was thinking of a special plan. In terms of potential, Zombie was higher than all the ghouls in the laboratory. Han Dong made a plan after taking into account the special feeding habits of these creatures. Since Lord Shane of the Slave City wanted to find trouble, Han Dong gladly went to the appointment and took this opportunity to get a complete corpse of Shane of the mythical realm for Zombie. If Zombie could eat perfectly, he would continue to the next step. If he was stuffed to death during the eating period, it meant that he was not qualified. Now Zombie, who had achieved the gate opening, had reached the basic standard. He took advantage of the opportunity to let Zombie participate in the lower-level assessment by taking advantage of the fall in the main abyss. Although, from Grimm's point of view, he disdained such an assessment and identity. But for most of the hybrid demons, becoming a lower-level resident was simply a rare opportunity. Once you become a low-level resident, it was equivalent to obtaining the recognition of the abyss. At the same time, one would also obtain the purest chaos attribute. It would be of great help to one's comprehension of myths and legends or to one's strength. This kind of opportunity was unique to the center of chaos. It was similar to the wall viewing that he had experienced in Toad and K. If Bang could really pass the test, as a ghoul, his body would also be bestowed with the chaos attribute. This way, the research on ghouls would reach a whole new level. After receiving a positive answer from Han Dong, Zhang Ziyan nodded. Grimm's tongue wriggled forward. It drilled into Han Dong's ear, passed through his eardrum, and directly stuck to the surface of his brain. The message was conveyed through a special kind of silent vibration. It's against the rules to create chaos creatures. If I go overboard, Father might be very unhappy. Don't let anyone else know about this. I'll keep it a secret for you. Since these trivial matters were done, there was no need to think about anything else during the remaining time. He quickly went to sleep so that his body could recover to its peak condition. It wasn't easy to come to the party, so he had to enjoy it. Moreover, the entrance might be more troublesome. Right now, your body's condition is not good at all. You can only carry out basic activities. I don't want you to be unable to hold on before 2 rounds. I'll be responsible for your safety during the fall. You can rest as much as you want. Okay, since Grimm had said so, Han Dong did not force anything. They maintained the state of leaning on each other and licking each other's brain with their tongues, and fell asleep directly. However, Grimm had no intention of letting go. He maintained his grip on Han Dong's shoulder, even his tongue was still stuck to the surface of his brain. Not only that, squeak squeak squeak, origin tentacles that were adhered to the chaos body fluid drilled out of the holes on Grimm's body surface. They slowly slid along Han Dong's body. As long as there were holes, they would turn back into the body and carry out a special physical repair. This scene seemed to be very similar to a scene in the past. Sally was still able to accept regular hugs and hugs. The scene in front of her directly drew out the dark memories that had sunk into the deepest part of Sally's mind. "Grim, what are you doing?" If it was in the past, Sally would never have dared to speak to Grim like this. In an instant, a voice that was full of soul pressure directly swept through Sally's consciousness. There was even an eye of the abyss that opened in her mind. Although it was very impatient, it still explained the reason to Sally. "You should know Nicholas's condition better than I do, right? Sally, he can move around in such a short period of time because of your organ reproduction, the effect of the forced repair. It's still far from a true recovery. I am the abyss. Here, I can absorb chaos energy without limit. The rest of the injuries will be healed by me. Although it's not as satisfying as killing, the healing is quite interesting. At the same time, I can also understand the condition of Nicholas' body. This kid seems to have changed a lot after I haven't seen him for more than a year." Oh, Sally immediately admitted defeat and made an obedient expression. She admitted that she had indeed thought wrongly, but, based on her understanding of Grim, this kind of healing-related thing would never happen to Grim. Looking at such an intimate scene in front of her, Sally actually slowly accepted it. The dark memories that had sunk into the depths of her mind were also slowly changing. It seemed to become less terrible. Gradually, no matter how exaggerated the scene in front of her was, Sally no longer resisted. She even felt a little excited when some of the larger tentacles drilled into special parts. Or she was curious about the chain reaction of Han Dong in the Dreamlands. Or she wanted to find a chance to test Han Dong's body in the future. Compared to the tentacles that Sally used to replace Han Dong's organs, the treatment that Grim provided was obviously much more rough. Just like that, time passed day by day. Along the way, Grim even killed a mythical Shane who had absorbed too much essence of madness and was extremely excited and tried to attack everyone. It was directly made into brain milk tea. Grim also very considerately sent a portion of milk tea into Han Dong's mouth through the tentacles to replenish his nutrient. Day 20. Nicholas, it's almost time to wake up. You've been sleeping for too long. Grim's voice penetrated the dream and reached Han Dong's main consciousness. When the consciousness was transported back to reality through the dream path, an unprecedented feeling of fullness and strength swept through his body. What's with this feeling of fullness? Han Dong first examined his arms back and forth, then lifted his clothes to look at his torso. There seemed to be some residual mucus at his belly button. Han Dong immediately realized something and quickly reached out to touch the lower part of his back. Sure enough, a cloud of turbid mucus stuck to the surface of his finger. Han Dong immediately understood why his body felt so full. He did not delve deeper into it. The changes in front of him were the most important. At the current depth of the fall, he could no longer see the edge of the abyss, as if he was in an endless space of chaos. At the bottom, he could vaguely see a strange and twisted landing point. Chapter 1717. Abyss Party. It was personally built by the Supreme One, the ruler of the world, the leader of chaos and the ultimate madness. It was located at the bottom of the main abyss and was also an important core of the Chaos Star. In addition, the Abyss Party was not a private territory but was open to the whole world. From the old kings to the newly born hybrid demons, they all knew about the existence of the Abyss Party. Some hybrid demons even set it as their lifelong goal. Individuals who had made heroic contributions during major events and whose strength had reached the king level but did not obtain the throne could receive an invitation to the Abyss Party from the Chaos. For example, the human leader who fought against the king of the enemy in the London game room and even suppressed and killed him had received this invitation during the award ceremony. As for whether he would come or not, that was another matter. In addition, individuals who did not receive an invitation could also spontaneously go to the center of the chaos. Just like Han Dong and the others, they continued to fall in the main abyss for an entire month. As long as they could withstand the crazy erosion and resist the attacks from the residents at the bottom, they would be allowed to go to the abyss party on the premise that they fell to the deepest part. Even the individuals who had participated in the party could not give an exact answer to what the abyss party was used for, because every time they went to the party, they would have different gains. A grand event that gathered monsters, geniuses, and kings. Could everyone indulge themselves in the party and exchange in-depth experiences to improve? This was just the simplest definition. Rumor had it that someone had once received legendary equipment as a reward during the party. There was also a mythical body that directly broke through the bottleneck, that was once untouchable during the party and turned the mythical painting into the territory of the king's territory at the party. There were also people who obtained the qualifications to read a certain demonic book. There were even people who were reserved for the throne during the party. In short, when it came to the abyss party, most hybrid demons would think of the endless opportunities. As long as they could go to the abyss party normally and leave alive in a normal state, they would definitely gain something. Splat! Han Dong landed on the surface of a soft object. He looked down. The path under his feet was made of colorful lumps, similar to a stone path, only the stones needed to be replaced with small lumps that were soft and elastic. The path that emitted a faint light meandered into the depths. You have to stand firm. This glimmering path is the only way to the abyss party. The concept of space below is completely chaotic. Once they deviated from the path, even if they took a wrong step, they would completely sink into chaos. Unless one was a genius like Bob, it would be very difficult to step on this path again. However, Nicholas, you seem to be spending a lot of time with Bob recently. I can smell his scent on your body. Come to think of it, your void skills have also improved greatly. You can give it a try. No, it's better to walk normally. Speaking of which, entering the party later should be very troublesome, right? It wasn't easy for Han Dong to recover to his peak condition. He didn't want to be exhausted when they were almost at the entrance of the party. It's a little troublesome. After all, we don't have an invitation letter with us. Falling is just one of the verification modes. Entering is equivalent to completing our qualification check. He couldn't let some random cats and dogs, who had exhausted their strength from just falling, enter the party. Of course, when there isn't enough food in the party, they will occasionally let them through directly. Grimm straightened his arms on both sides, making a posture to maintain a sense of balance. He jumped on the surface of the differently colored lumps and walked in front to lead the way. Han Dong followed closely behind, and Sally followed at the end of the team. With everyone's level, unless there was extremely serious interference, otherwise, it was almost impossible to step out of the path. While walking, Han Dong felt the long-lost fullness state while releasing the phaseless domain to deal with unexpected situations. Occasionally, he felt Sally's strange gaze from behind him. "Sally, what's wrong?" "No, nothing." Even though they had already completed the fall, Sally still found it difficult to seal the scene of the fall. As soon as she saw Han Dong, various stimulating scenes of tentacles drilling into the body would emerge. Get ready. I don't think it's that easy to enter the abyss party. This time, Han Dong took the initiative to stretch out his hand behind him. As he held Sally's hand tightly, he also suppressed the strange scenes in her head. Just like that, after about 2 hours of walking, a different scene finally appeared in front of them. A mouth-shaped entrance with tentacles stuffed between the teeth was at the end of the path. This mouth opened at more than 180 degrees, and almost no other structure could be seen. A mysterious man shrouded in a black cloak, stooped, thin and weak, was standing at the door. A row of silver teeth was exposed under the hood, and the number of teeth was about 5 times that of a normal human. Crack, 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 this demon was constantly grinding his teeth. The moment they heard this sound, Han Dong and Sally both stopped and reached out to cover their cheek. They felt that the teeth in their mouths were also grinding, and there were even additional jagged teeth growing in the inner wall of their mouth. This kind of tooth grinding was a method of this person's crazy spread and invasion. Who knew? Grim stepped forward and hugged the demon. Brother Crazy Tooth, you're actually in charge of the entrance of the party here. You lost a lot of money recently, right? It's just bad luck. I'll win it back sooner or later. When talking about losing money, the frequency of teeth grinding increased significantly, and even Han Dong needed to activate crazy laughter to resist. At the same time, it was also during the grinding of his teeth. Wisps of breath from Han Dong and Sally were sucked into the demon's body through the gaps between his teeth. By the way, did these guys come to the party with you? They don't have any trace of the party's breath on them, so they have to go through a complete admission audit. Of course, according to the rules set by Dad. Wait. Why is there an atavistic body here? Are you kidding me? The Abyss Party has never accepted an atavistic body. Not to mention that this level can't enter normally, it will inevitably become a plaything or food inside, right? Are you talking about Nicholas? He is a distinguished guest that Dad has personally seen. Test him according to the standards of a mythical body. Don't worry, I'll be responsible for any problems. Father has personally seen this person? Indeed, the breath is mixed with a kind of madness that I have never seen before. However, this is not enough to meet Father. Okay, come with me. The entrance inspection equipment has not been used for a long time. If it has failed, I will test it myself. Chapter 17-18. Han Dong dug out the extra strange teeth in his mouth and became curious about the identity of the guard. Examining the mouth-shaped entrance and the mysterious man with silver teeth, he could roughly see that the party entrance was affected by this person's domain, which was why it became like this. If the guard was changed, it would probably be another entrance. As he followed into the mouth, Han Dong quietly asked, "Grim, who is this?" "Tooth Emperor Baron Regans. 231 years before me, born from my father's broken tooth. According to the relationship between you humans, he is my elder brother. This guy is much stronger than the other children, and he has a good relationship with me. Don't look at him as a guard here. His strength is very strong even in the party. Many of the old Wangdu who are in power are not his opponent." "So strong? Then why doesn't he have a throne? Some people are not born to become a king. His strength reached the standard 100 years ago, and he is fully qualified to compete for the throne. It's just that he doesn't have the heart to take care of the city or the kingdom, and he didn't participate in the competition for the throne. He is more willing to stay in the Abyss Party for endless eating, drinking, and fun. Even so, this guy's strength has been increasing. It seems that staying in the Abyss Party to release madness is his best path of development. Everyone has their own choice. In fact, this is not bad." They continued to follow to the entrance of the assessment area. He thought that for a top place like this, the entrance assessment would inevitably be carried out in a gorgeous and formal area. But in front of him was a small room that had been sealed for a long time, similar to an equipment room. There were some ancient stone instruments installed inside, which seemed to be able to measure the relevant abilities of an individual through contact. However, the Tooth Emperor fiddled in front of the instrument for a long time but couldn't activate it normally. In a hurry, he even bit a huge hole in the instrument, completely destroying the instrument. Han Dong asked awkwardly, "Are these things not used often? How do the other testers enter?" "Well, different guards have different standards. Because Grim brought you here, I thought of testing you in the most conventional way. Under normal circumstances, it's not so simple. Everyone will take advantage of their position and get some rebates. As long as you can bring out something of value, we will go easy on you. Even if someone who wasn't strong enough was put in, they could still add some nourishment to the party and wouldn't be held responsible at all. Sigh, I can't use any of these antiques. What was he going to do? I might as well just let you guys in. But I'm still very curious as to how you could come here with your atavistic body and even meet Father in the center of the chaos. Han Dong suddenly made a suggestion. How about this? Senior Tooth Emperor will give me a test alone, no matter what form it takes. If you think I meet the standard, then let me in. Although the entrance examination seems very casual, since there is such a setting, there must be a reason for its existence. Oh! The Tooth Emperor revealed a rarely seen strange smile. My assessment methods are all relatively dangerous. Are you sure you want to proceed? Of course, considering that you are Green's friends, I will choose a relatively safe way. To be tested by an expert like Senior is an opportunity in itself. When Han Dong heard the description of the Tooth Emperor, he was thinking about this matter in his heart. Although it seemed quite crazy, in Han Dong's eyes, it was a great opportunity to promote his cognition and growth. The difference in level between us is too big, so we won't carry out the combat assessment. From the moment you met me until now, you have been constantly affected by the tooth sound. However, you are completely fine, especially on the spiritual level. Moreover, your head is still emitting a gray aura, which seems to have a lot to do with the walker. How about this? The assessment is mainly based on the spiritual influence, and the location is set in my mouth. If you can last 3 minutes in my mouth, I will let you pass. Okay. Han Dong had just agreed. A silver light flashed in front of his eyes. There was no warning at all, nor was there any reaction. Even if the formless domain was maintained, Han Dong's body only took a small step back, and he couldn't dodge at all. In the blink of an eye, Han Dong was already standing on the surface of a jagged, cold, and strange tongue. This is the Tooth Emperor's mouth. Han Dong immediately observed the current space with his demon eye. It was barely compared to a human mouth for further description. Whether it was the upper part of the mouth or both sides, it was full of dense teeth. Even the surface of the tongue where Han Dong was standing was full of dense, uneven teeth. Not only that, there were also small holes on the surface of these teeth, and tentacles like tooth nerves drilled in and out, looking very painful. Crack, crack, crack. Under the wriggling of the nerve tentacles, a large number of teeth began to move, close to each other and fiercely rubbed against each other. The moment the sound came out, it directly brought a tearing pain to Han Dong's brain, and even the little finger of his right hand was torn off without warning, and blood flowed non-stop. The dual effect of the mind and the body. Han Dong no longer held back and immediately responded with all his strength. Using the torn little finger, he drew an exaggerated red smile along the outside of his lip. In reality, because Han Dong was instantly swallowed into the Tooth Emperor's mouth, Sally clamped her legs out of worry. She had heard of the Tooth Emperor's name. In her impression, this guy was ridiculously strong. Grim, on the other hand, didn't seem to care, and even fiddled with the ancient equipment in the assessment area out of boredom. The Tooth Emperor asked curiously, "Grim, what's the relationship between this kid and you? Why did you bring him here personally?" "Nicholas is my only close friend. I naturally have to bring him to the Abyss party to have a good time." "Close friend? This is the first time I've seen you use such a word. But you don't seem to be worried at all. You should know that my assessment belongs to the more dangerous category. With such a big difference in level, I don't have the confidence to hold back." "Don't worry, Nicholas won't die." At this moment, the Tooth Emperor suddenly felt that something was wrong, and his mouth was filled with an indescribable strange feeling. Ha ha ha! Waves of ethereal, faintly discernible laughter seemed to be stuck to the gaps between the Tooth Emperor's teeth, slowly spreading outwards. This is. Gradually, at the same time as the laughter intensified, it was accompanied by a rare toothache. Because he had been playing in the party for many years, the Tooth Emperor had almost forgotten the feeling of toothache. When the long-lost feeling came, it was a little uncomfortable, but at the same time, it revealed a burst of dark pleasure, and its body began to tremble slightly. As time passed, the toothache continued to intensify, as if needles were poking into the depths of the gums and constantly stirring. 3 minutes passed. The excited Tooth Emperor spat out Han Dong's entire body. At this time, if one were to observe the Tooth Emperor's mouth, they would find that the surface of most of the teeth was branded with a red smiley face mark. The effect of the fatal joke continued to be applied. Slap. However, as the Tooth Emperor slapped his lower jaw, the shock instantly tore the smiley face into pieces. I've never seen your madness before, and whether it's quality or rarity, they are all top-notch and you have reached the mythical level in some aspects, so that's how it is. Go in, have fun. Chapter 17-19. After feeling Han Dong's crazy quality and characteristics, Tooth Emperor Baron Regans left the assessment area with satisfaction. He returned to the entrance and took up his job as a guard. Since he had lost all his capital, he still owed a lot of money. The Tooth Emperor's guard job was expected to take 912 years to pay off all his debts. Of course, this was only an estimated number of years. As long as a few more outsiders came to the party and collected some special fees, he would be able to pay off the debt quickly. If he was lucky, he could even compress the time to within a year. In the only aisle leading to the Abyss party, Han Dong was leaning against the side of the wall, doing a very necessary thing, tooth extraction. For the Tooth Emperor, the crazy laughter made his teeth hurt a little during the 3-minute assessment. He even felt a little happy because he hadn't experienced such pain for a long time. Han Dong, on the other hand, was having a hard time. Even if he used crazy laughter to defend himself, even if the assessment only lasted for 3 minutes, the injury it brought to Han Dong was quite serious. Sally, who was beside him, was also extremely uncomfortable. She was carefully helping to deal with the tooth injury. Whether it was the head or the body, whether it was the surface or the inside of the body, there were no gaps, and it was full of densely packed silver teeth. Even his consciousness was invaded. A few teeth grew on the surface of the tombstone in the space of consciousness. However, the overall proportion was not large, and his consciousness was still stable. Obviously, this crazy invasion related to teeth had seeped into every corner of his body. Only the talent tree had not been eroded. This was the only thing worth rejoicing about. The Tooth Emperor was only responsible for the assessment and had no obligation to deal with the follow-up. The current Han Dong looked like a tooth man. Each tooth was wriggling slightly on the surface of his body, continuously absorbing energy and nibbling away at his body. Even if Han Dong's lips were full of teeth, he still maintained a strange smile. It seemed that the harvest brought by this assessment was far greater than the physical pain. Sally, help me pull it out quickly. Don't worry about the wound. Okay. This was not an ordinary tooth extraction. These teeth came from the Tooth Emperor, and at the bottom were connected to at least 5 nerve roots, firmly clasped between the layers of flesh. Moreover, the worst were the teeth that grew in the body, especially some teeth that grew on the surface of organs, which were extremely deadly. Cough, cough, cough. Han Dong, whose body had been plucked into a bloody mess, was coughing violently. He kept coughing out the teeth that had been dug out from his body, and there was already a pile of them in front of him that was tens of centimeters high. Han Dong, who had finished stripping all the materials, sat cross-legged in the air. Underworld blood flowed through the entire body. Together with the G-virus, it regenerated and activated the stem cells. Sally asked with a puzzled expression, "Nicholas, why must you do this?" At that time, the Tooth Emperor clearly allowed us to enter directly. Why did we have to go through the assessment and get covered in injuries? What if we can't hold on during the party? No, this is good. To be able to let me experience the most important area of the Tooth Emperor's mouth for a full 3 minutes, To be able to feel the essence of insanity, teeth. This feeling was simply too great. My body even tolerated and adapted to some of this madness, which was of great help to my growth. As long as my soul and consciousness aren't damaged, I can repair them. Besides, my body was stuffed with sufficient, or even excessive, energy while I was falling asleep. It's a good opportunity to release myself. Due to the excess energy in his body, when Han Dong completed the repair, he still had 80% to 90% of the total energy value. Moreover, because of the tooth extraction just now, his mind was abnormally clear. The insanity brought by the Tooth Emperor also allowed Han Dong to enter the state in advance. It was equivalent to a warm-up exercise before entering the Abyss Party. His right palm brushed past his face, reflecting a bright red smiley face. His left hand used pure death magic to construct a black balloon in his hand. The surface of the balloon was also smeared with a smiley face. "Let's go, it's time for us to enter." Grimm, who was waiting in the depths of the passage, immediately smelled a familiar aura that made him excited. When he turned around and caught a glimpse of Han Dong's image, his body also became excited, and the holes all over his body also shrank back and forth. "Nicholas, you're amazing! Is this the reason why you took the initiative to ask the Tooth Emperor to assess you, by using him, a gambler who has been mingling with parties for a long time, to achieve an early adaptation?" Grimm took the initiative to step forward and directly put his hand on Han Dong's shoulder. The small holes that shrank between his arms were also tightly attached to the surface of his shoulders. A kind of crazy interaction had begun. Not far ahead was the exit of the passage. The blurry light and shadow emitted by the exit could effectively block the penetration of the magic eye. Before stepping out of the passage, there was no way to know what the outside of the exit corresponded to. Was it an exaggerated and bottomless bloody party? Or was it an open party with the theme of madness, full of danger and opportunity? Or was it a banquet where demons danced wildly, without any restrictions, killing and devouring each other? Just as Han Dong stepped out of the passage with great curiosity, the scene in front of him suddenly stunned him, and the black balloon in his hand also became a very ordinary calm expression. Sally, who was following behind him, was also somewhat puzzled by the situation in front of her. It was very different from what she had imagined. A fully sealed round hut with an area of less than 50 square meters. It was also made of indestructible chaos stones. Other than a colored door at the front, there were no other decorations. In addition, there was a special creature standing in the center of the room. Its stooped body was shrouded in a broken chaos cloak. It had a total of 6 arms, symmetrically spread out on its back. On its fingers, the wrinkled skin on the surface of its body, and even the curved tongue that stretched out were full of iron rings and keys. Only the 2 arms that stretched out in front of it remained clean. It held a square black box in front of it that was 30 by 30 by 30 centimeters. Han Dong could feel a powerful and primitive chaos energy from this creature's body. "Grimm, this is..." When Pops created the Abyss Party, he personally created the person in charge, also known as the Key. Everything that we will experience in the Abyss Party is related to it. Come on, Nicholas, reach into the black box and pull out a key. The color and size of the key will correspond to the type of party we will experience next. There's such a setting? Han Dong did not refuse and immediately stepped forward. Grimm quickly added, "Oh right, don't play any tricks during the extraction of the key. Once caught by the keymaker, your arm will be his food. The soul of the arm will be permanently imprisoned in the black box, and the key will make a brand new party key." Okay. Han Dong chose to put his left arm into it, which would be a little safer. Just as his arm touched the key in the box, Han Dong's eyes immediately widened. What he touched was not a cold key at all, but a constantly struggling arm, eager to grab Han Dong's palm, begging to escape the black box. Chapter 1720. The black box in the hands of the key holder has a built-in space. When Han Dong reached in, it was like rummaging through a pile of hybrid demons' broken arms. Although it felt weird, Han Dong quickly accepted this setting. A long delay or the use of any ability to explore is against the rules, and the arm will be permanently cut off by the key holder. The only thing that can be used is intuition. Since it's the first time coming to the Abyss Party, it's better to be steady. Han Dong completed the handshake with one of the broken arms by feeling. When this action was completed, the arm held by Han Dong immediately compressed the flesh and turned into the shape of a key. Tada, I've chosen it. When he pulled out the black box, a red key with a square structure was held in his hand. Clang! The key group on the key holder's body made a fierce collision sound due to shaking, and the black box was kept in the body, unable to be extracted a second time. Oh, your luck is really good, Nicholas. This kind of opening is indeed more suitable for newcomers like you. Come with me. As long as you insert the key into the lock of this door, we will start the first party. Green, don't worry, we should be able to stay in the current area for a while, right? If we stay for a long time, will the key holder attack us? In theory, we are allowed to rest here for up to an hour. After all, some of the corresponding parties will be very dangerous, and my father kindly gave us the time to stay in the design. An hour? Green, why don't you explain the relationship between this key and the party in detail? Yes, I forgot to explain the rules here to you. This is still very necessary. The color, specification, and model of the key have different meanings. First of all, let's talk about the color. The colors are divided into 3 types. Red, party house, which is the color you draw. The interior corresponds to a party in the conventional sense. We can party inside, enjoy all kinds of food, and engage in all kinds of entertainment, such as Tooth Emperor's favorite gambling. Green, opportunity house. It belongs to the form of party I hate the most. Every individual or group who enters the party will get an opportunity card and must complete the corresponding requirements according to the instructions on it. Although the corresponding reward will be given according to the indicated difficulty afterward. If you can't complete it, you will be directly removed from the Abyss Party, and may even be seriously injured or even die. Blue, unknown house. This was rather interesting. The interior corresponded to a completely unknown party mode. Could be an absolute death match, or it could be a masquerade ball. If one's luck was good, they might even be able to obtain some treasures or extremely rare qualifications during the party. That was all there was to the color. As for the type of key, which was the structure of the key teeth, it was also divided into 3 types. The square teeth symbolize peace. Whether it was the type of party or the participants of the party, they were all relatively stable. No one would take the initiative to attack. In fact, they could even engage in crazy exchanges without restraint. The corrugated key teeth symbolize intensity. The party scene was very exciting, and it would actively stimulate the participants to have physical or mental collisions. The weak would either become slaves or be sent directly to the kitchen to be processed as ingredient. Key teeth without any rules symbolize chaos, and chaotic parties without rules are my favorite type. Han Dong nodded after hearing the explanation. 9 different types of combinations? From the sound of it, my red square key was indeed the simplest choice. I could get used to it in advance. By the way, I have another question. Can we only participate in one Abyss Party, or can we draw a key after every party and continue to the next one? It was not easy for everyone to come here. Of course, we can't just leave after one party. As long as your spirit and body can hold on, we can keep going. We have to have fun this time. Maybe you, Nicholas, can complete the mythical structure during the party. I hope so. The black balloon in Han Dong's hand turned back into a smiling face. He inserted the key in his hand into the rainbow door. Click! When he heard the sound of the lock turning, Grim, who was beside him, pushed the rainbow door open forcefully. A large, rotten, swollen, and withered party venue came into view. Waves of powerful aura with different characteristics rushed toward them. Whether it was the guests on the dance floor who were madly dancing with all kinds of limbs, or the gamblers who took out all kinds of belongings, treasures, and even cut off their own limbs to bet in front of the flesh gambling table, or the guests who were communicating with all kinds of tentacles and bodies in the room made of flesh net. Each of them was incomparably powerful, most of them were at the late stage of the mythical stage, and there were also a few real regent levels mixed in. Among them, Han Dong also caught the strongest aura, stronger than the average regent. It came from the center, the chaotic dance floor. An ancient Naga with a silver-scaled snake tail and a noble snake staff was performing a crazy dance that was similar to that of a primitive tribe. As he danced, the other guests on the dance floor would climb all kinds of strange snakes and bite into the back of their heads, ensuring that everyone's dance steps were the same through a special nerve control. It seemed very dangerous, but it was actually a kind of opportunity. The individuals controlled by the strange snakes would receive the gift of the Snake Father. They could get a unique insight during the dance similar to the Bufo's wall observation. Even Grimm's eyes widened. Oh, I didn't expect the Snake Father to come. This is a relatively big role, and it belongs to the same level as the Bufo, you know, Han Dong. Let's go, let's hurry over and try the snake dance, we can't miss such a rare opportunity. The floor of the party was paved with an extremely smooth hybrid demon blood vessel, which helped the individuals slide forward. If they were thirsty, they only needed to grab a blood vessel to drink high-quality, refined blood wine without any side effect. It could quickly replenish energy and stimulate the nerves, causing the individuals to fall into a state of excitement. They quickly slid to the chaotic dance floor. Han Dong, who was already prepared, immediately stepped in. Buzz. He was immediately enveloped by a kind of regent-level domain. Han Dong could clearly feel that a part of his flesh was forcibly peeled off, forming a gray snake with a black vortex mark on his abdomen. What kind of domain is this? It actually used me as a model and substrate to form a homologous snake with the same attribute. Just as Han Dong was amazed, the gray snake had already opened its fangs and bit into the back of his head. In an instant, a stable consciousness connection was established, and Han Dong's body quickly danced with the rhythm of the Snake Father. His consciousness followed the passage established by the homologous snake into the brain of the Snake Father, and came to an extremely ancient snake kingdom. Standing on top of the temple, below, tens of thousands of snake men were performing a ritual dance. A variety of ancient insights were being passed into Han Dong's consciousness through the form of dance. According to the different perception of the individual, the harvest was naturally different. Unconsciously, Han Dong's consciousness also followed the dance, and even slowly floated in the air. Chapter 1721. Grimm only danced for a while on the chaotic dance floor, then he pulled out the homologous snake that bit the back of his head and left the dance floor. It was not that Grimm looked down on such a snake dance. It was that this dance from the Serpentine Kingdom was not of much help to him who was creating the king's district. The difference in compatibility was too big. Perhaps he would also get some inspiration, but in Grimm's opinion, it was better to do other projects. When he left the dance floor, he glanced at Han Dong, who was dancing in sync. What was different from other dancers was that Han Dong not only danced in sync, but also fell into a state of complete immersion, his whole body floating in the air. His dance was more perfect than any other dancer. Your adaptability is really unparalleled. Moreover, no matter what kind of inspiration, you can transform it into your own thing, all-inclusive. This is very similar to Naya, or even better. It's really interesting, I'm looking forward to your mythical construction. He came to a dark wall full of holes. He put his arm into one of the holes, and after a short while, He pulled out a specially made cocktail and put it in an organ-style wine glass. Grimm knew very well that Han Dong would stay on the dance floor for a long time. So he took the wine glass and went to the party's special compartment. As Grimm was a VIP here, he could enjoy exclusive service. A waiter whose neck was completely cut open came out to receive him. The exposed throat was full of meat particles, rubbing against each other and making a blurred sound. "How can I help you?" "Help me arrange a extreme banquet for 3 people. The cost will be deducted from my abyss points." "Okay." For Grimm, the peace party, corresponding to the red square key, was only equivalent to a rest area. There was not much that could stimulate him. Whether it was gambling, wild dancing, or physical indulgence, it was not very interesting to him. Since Han Dong had drawn the safest party, he would let them get used to it first. Coupled with this extreme banquet, it could also prepare for the subsequent problems. "I don't know how long you can hold on for the first time, Han Dong. I hope you can show your crazy nature at the final moment, so that we can achieve a true sense of complementarity. Don't waste my good intentions, I believe you can do it." Consciousness coordination rate -99. 9%. Kingdom of the Nagas. Volusia Han Dong, who was dancing gracefully, entered an unprecedented state of fusion. Not only was he floating in the air, the black vortex on his abdomen was also slowly rotating. It was the formless domain that he had learned in the Chaos Cell. Coupled with Han Dong's high adaptability, he was able to assimilate completely in a very short time. He even unknowingly simulated himself as a Naga. At the end of the dance, an ancient voice that seemed to come from a deep valley reverberated in Han Dong's mind. "You are Warren Nicholas? I've heard of your name from the Bufo a long time ago, but I didn't expect you to be so special. Your mimicry seems to come from an important descendant of mine, Karen City. Oh right, you seem to be an associate professor at the University of Mishima. Are you too close?" Snake Father. When Han Dong opened his eyes, his body was hanging on the top floor of the ancient temple. Snake Father, who was holding a scepter, stood in front of him, but he didn't feel too oppressive. Han Dong's consciousness had been completely connected here because of the previous dance and had become an important member. "Yes, I worked with Professor Karen on a mission not long ago. As for the relationship, it's just an ordinary colleague. I don't have much interaction with Professor Karen except for missions. Maybe it's a subconscious imitation. Immersed in this dance that carries ancient words and Naga culture, I can't control the state of my brain at all. I just want to absorb as much knowledge as possible." "That's a pity. Karen is an extremely special Naga with extremely high talent. She's somewhat similar to you. In the future, if you want to learn more about our kingdom, you can ask Karen to take you to the real Naga kingdom. I believe you can learn more interesting things from there." "Okay, but my schedule is very tight recently." This was an invitation from Snake Father himself, and the other party was only an atavistic body. If the matter of declining the invitation was spread out, it would inevitably cause an uproar. Hearing Han Dong's reply, even Snake Father, who was having fun in the party, was unhappy. Han Dong could already feel that every piece of flesh in his body was wriggling as if it would soon evolve into different kinds of poisonous snakes and nibble away at his body. "Snake Father, please allow me to show you some scenes." Due to the high degree of integration of consciousness, Han Dong easily shared the images of the Black Tower and the things related to the Rampager. "I've heard some rumors from the University of Mishima recently. Is it so serious? If all of them are chaotic existences similar to the Great Impure, it's really difficult to deal with. The time is indeed very short. Is that all the information you have so far? More information can only be obtained when I become a mythical creature. That's why I can't guarantee that I will have time to go to your country, Snake Father. I have to guarantee that I will become a mythical creature within 4 years and go to the most unstable area in the Black Tower. They'll shelter it to check out the most detailed information. So that's how it is. It seems that you have become the core axis of this incident. In that case, I can't be stingy when I meet you here. I'll give you this thing. It can help you last longer in the Abyss Party and maintain a better state. I see that you are not far away from becoming a mythical creature. Try to break through the barrier here in one fell swoop. As soon as he finished speaking, something was moving in Snake Father's throat. A dark green stone with body fluid attached to it appeared on the surface of the tongue. When the hundreds of forked snake tongues delivered the stone to Han Dong's hand, the consciousness connection between the two was also broken. Buzz. The dance floor was already empty, and Snake Father seemed to have gone to the next party space. Only Sally kept waving on the outside of the dance floor. Nicholas, you're in a strange state. Snake Father's dance has already ended, but you continued to stay on the dance floor for more than an hour. What happened? Snake Father and I talked about some things and gave me this thing. When Han Dong stepped out of the dance floor, he showed the dark green stone that was still warm in his hand. Sally screamed directly. Fortunately, this was the Abyss Party, and this kind of scream was a very normal sound. There were all kinds of stimulating sounds of flesh colliding in the area next door where the meat web was connected. Could this be the original snake gallbladder that Snake Father kept when he changed bodies? Rumor has it that as long as one takes such a snake gallbladder, even if the body is chopped into minced meat and the soul is completely crushed, it can be restored to its original state. No one knows the specific effects at all. A treasure like this will not leave the kingdom of the snake people. What did you do to make Snake Father give you such a treasure? Ah, I just chatted with him and then gave it to me. That's it? Chapter 1722. Grim seems to have disappeared. Isn't he with you? No, he isn't. When I woke up from the dance room, Grim was no longer there. Maybe this kind of snake dance was too different from the king's district he wanted to create, so he left in advance. After all, Grim is too special. This kind of enlightenment that seems to be helpful to all the mantis demons is actually not very effective for him. I can't even feel his existence. Where did he go? Han Dong touched the small hole in his shoulder. Maybe because of the Abyss Party's shielding effect, he still couldn't determine Grim's position. It didn't matter. Since Grim was temporarily absent, Han Dong chose his own entertainment. The black balloon in his hand revealed an extremely crazy smile, which meant that Han Dong had completely integrated into this party. His eyes swept across the swollen, distorted, joyful, and intense party hall. What should we play? Sally hurriedly tugged at Han Dong's sleeve and pointed at the special area that was separated by the meat net. Some of the private rooms in the area were not being used. Through the meat net, a large bed of pure meat could be vaguely seen. All kinds of common, uncommon, and even beyond understanding were integrated in the meat bed. They could play with it however they wanted. Do you have time? Just as Han Dong accepted Sally's suggestion and walked toward the meat net area, a very penetrating voice suddenly came. Nicholas, Sally, are you done? Hurry up and come over. The extreme feast is ready, just waiting for the two of you. Hurry up, this is a special item that I spent Abyss points to buy. Sally, who was immersed in the illusion, was instantly knocked back to reality. While she was feeling slightly dejected, she suddenly smelled a scent, a unique scent that caused her blood to surge and even her thoughts to be drawn away. It was like the first time she tasted breast milk in the Black Forest. It was like the unique taste that she tasted every time she made a breakthrough. Sally's desire was instantly suppressed, and she began to wonder what the extreme feast that Grim mentioned was. Similarly, Han Dong also smelled this smell that he had never experienced before, and it almost brought his thoughts back to the world of his previous life. When the two of them stepped into the cubicle where Green was, the chaos stones intertwined with each other, completely blocking off the entrance behind them. Only VIPs who had paid a fee had the right to enter such a special area. The attendant, whose neck had been sliced open, was making a gesture to invite them to take a seat. The particles in the throat collided with each other and produced a strange sound. The extreme feast has been prepared for the three of you. Please take a seat quickly. Any delay will affect the freshness of the ingredient. The so-called armchair. It was a tongue chair that had been specially treated to keep the tongue fresh and was then made with the most advanced suturing technology. These tongues were taken from special fiend creatures that were proficient in swallowing and tasting. Every tongue was still active, and its taste buds were working normally. Once the individual was seated, the taste buds would perfectly fit the guest's body, effectively stimulating the taste buds. His appetite was greatly stimulated. The ability to absorb all kinds of food and taste would increase. It was an essential item for the extreme banquet. Splat when he sat down on the soft, wet chair. The chair immediately shrank and perfectly adhered to the surface of the individual. It even kept licking Han Dong's special skin. Rumble, his stomach also made a sound. Is it so effective? I suddenly feel like eating. It seems to be able to accept any type of food. Han Dong even glanced at Sally beside him, staring at the lamb leg and drooling. Soon, the first appetizer was presented. The waiters who walked through their arms began to serve the dishes. However, there was no dining table here, and there were no dishes in their hands. The waiter walked blindly to the corresponding diner. When he came in front of Han Dong, the waiter's lower body immediately grew a large number of tentacles to replace his arms to support himself. He slowly raised his empty arm. Whoosh! Sharp claws popped out from his fingertip. He didn't want to attack Han Dong and the others. Instead, he inserted his sharp claws into his own head and cut open his skull in a circular shape. In an instant, the rich aroma in the skull gushed out, and the tongue on the surface of the chair was slapping wildly, further stimulating Han Dong's appetite. The dish in the skull was still boiling, and the temperature was more than 1,000 degrees Celsius. Only such a temperature could make the special ingredient completely soft and delicious. Immediately after, the waiter began to control the energy in his body. Through his own skills, he absorbed the heat of the dish stewing in the skull, lowering the temperature of the dish to an edible range. At the same time, he politely said, "Honorable guest, please eat." Han Dong had long been unable to bear the hunger. He directly inserted his palm into the skull and started this extreme feast in the most primitive way. Moreover, when he customized the dish for Han Dong, he also considered the factor of human. The dish in front of him was called Buddha Jumps Over the Wall in the Skull. It was simply irresistible. Han Dong was sweating profusely as he ate, and every muscle in his body was trembling. He even completely exposed the nature of the hybrid demon, and a tentacle grew out of his mouth to suck the thick soup. Hiss when Han Dong sucked the last drop of soup out of the bowl. The waiter also showed a satisfied smile, put his skull back, and crawled away. He was replaced by the next black goat descendant who was similar to Sally. This special female waiter came in front of Han Dong. Ta! An extra pair of goat hooves grew out of her spine, and her body fell backward. She supported herself with 4 legs, so that her body was in front of Han Dong. It seemed that the next dish was her body. Han Dong originally thought that it was a more erotic way of eating, but who knew that when this black goat descendant took off her clothes, her body also started to crack. A vertical crack extended from her lower abdomen to her chest. Whoosh! When the body cracked open, the body cavity was exposed. A slightly musky aroma hit his face, and it was more impactful than the previous Buddha jumps over the wall. The steamed ribs could be easily removed, and it could be seen as hand-grabbed lamb chops. The soup at the lower abdomen was completely boiled, and it could be seen as mutton giblets hot pot. This black goat descendant had the characteristics of rebirth and reproductive organs, and she also had a strong masochistic tendency, so she took the initiative to apply for the job as a waiter here. While Han Dong was eating, she kept making all kinds of excited cries, and her body was slightly trembling. Just like that. An unimaginable extreme feast brought the strongest sensory impact and physical satisfaction to the three of them, and it laid a good foundation for the next trip to the abyss. When he finished eating the last dish, Bu Fang's expression changed. Han Dong directly collapsed on the chair, and he kept gasping for breath. Sally, who was not far away, had the same expression. She even stuck her tongue out, her eyes rolled up, and saliva kept dripping. Her mind had already flown into the world of taste. This is so good. Green, I owe you a favor. The Abyss Party is so high. Chapter 1723. The Peace Party, corresponding to the Red Square Key, had certain restrictions. Unless special activities were carried out between the parties, such as gambling that consumed resources, or dancing that consumed physical strength and spirit. Otherwise, after staying for a while, they had to carry out the next round of key draw and go deeper into the Abyss Party. After the end of the extreme banquet, except for Grimm, who recovered in a short time, Han Dong and Sally were paralyzed in chairs for a long time due to the sensory impact of the first experience. It was not that they could not break free, but that they did not want to break free. After all, such a rare opportunity was really too rare. By the time the sensory stimulation of the two disappeared one after another, a full 3 hours had passed. This is the charm of the Abyss Party, and the price of the extreme banquet is very high. Even I can only eat it a few times. It's almost time. It's time to go to the next party. Han Dong was already satisfied. Whether it was the enlightenment and gift of the Snake Father, or the extreme banquet that had just ended, they all gave Han Dong an extreme sense of satisfaction in his current state. No matter what kind of party he faced, he could deal with it with all his strength. Han Dong, who had completely integrated into the Abyss Party, couldn't wait to participate in other types of parties. When the three of them entered the extreme banquet room one after another, the Luki with keys all over his body appeared in the central area of the party. Only Han Dong and the other two participants who were time up could see him. Nicholas, let's continue. Han Dong was still very willing to carry out the key lottery. After all, he had barely found the feeling of shaking hands in the previous lottery. He was groping for something in the black box space that was piled up with countless arms, relying on his intuition to grab one of the arms that felt completely different. When the two shook hands, the broken arm immediately evolved into the shape of a key. When the arm was in the black box, a dark blue key was in Han Dong's hand, and the gears were in the shape of irregular tentacles. When Grimm saw this scene, he came forward excitedly, grabbed Han Dong's palm, and held the key together. You're too lucky. The probability of drawing a blue key is very small, and this is a dark blue key. I'm afraid the actual probability of drawing is only 0.1%. Moreover, the teeth of the key also show an irregular type of chaos. Dark blue? Are there any different shades of color? Usually, there are very few differences in depth. Once it appeared, it meant that the degree would change. Blue represented the unknown house, and dark blue meant that the degree of unknown would deepen. Some deep unknown options might emerge. The danger index would also be greatly increased, and the interest level would also increase. I remember there was a time when the younger me and a group of low-level residents also drew the dark blue key, and there was a corresponding distortion party. A few arrogant fellows died in it. However, I was addicted to it, and it even widened the abyss in my body. I wonder what I'll get this time. Hearing Glenn's narration, Sally immediately became alert. Han Dong, on the other hand, had a smile on his face. He was even in a similar state of madness as Grimm. Let's go. Anyone who comes to the Abyss party must be prepared. If you're eliminated or die, it's just your own problem. He held the black balloon in one hand. Holding the key in one hand, he walked at the front of the team. When he inserted the key into the colorful door at the end of the party, the sound of the lock turning instantly drowned out the noise of the party behind him. It was as if the scene of the previous party had been completely filtered out. As the colorful door slowly opened, the entire space was directly turned 90 degrees. They should have stepped through the door horizontally, but instead, they fell into it. The Abyss party was already at the bottom, but it still continued to fall. This is the first time I've seen such a situation. Interesting. What kind of party does this correspond to? Grimm had no intention of stopping the fall at all. Instead, he accelerated downward, eager to know the specific situation of the next party. Seeing this, Han Dong and Sally had no choice but to follow. They swooped downward for about 10 minutes. Boom. Everyone landed steadily on a flat area filled with thick fog. Mr. Fogg set up a barrier here, and it's not weaker than the density of the chaos cell outside. Not long after, the fog dispersed on its own, revealing the true scene of this unknown party. The first thing that came into view was a pillar standing in the middle of the venue. It was built by chaos stones in a specific multi-dimensional geometric pattern, and the different levels were corresponding to the rotation pattern, and waves of powerful energy were constantly released outwards. When the fog had completely dispersed, countless mantis demon skulls were piled up here, creating an ancient and long-standing party area. Its structure was somewhat similar to a battle arena or a council hall. The individuals standing on the outer viewing platform were wrapped in robes that flowed with chaos. Their necks were all cut open, and a huge and exaggerated eyeball was suspended above them. Their pupils were either moving points or different geometric shapes. They were even in a hollow state. At this moment, their eyes all fell on the three young men who had unexpectedly arrived. There was also a throne made of chaos stones standing on the main viewing platform, but no one was sitting on it, and it was in a vacant state. Looking at the throne, Han Dong immediately fell into a state of shock. Half a year ago, when he had just arrived at the center of chaos, he had seen a similar throne. Although the size was smaller, the shape and structure were exactly the same. Grimm looked at the familiar abyssal pillar in the middle of the venue and whispered, "Oh, Nicholas, do you recognize it? This is a child throne, created by the essence of chaos according to Father's throne. Even I have come here for the first time. Rumor has it that Father set up the ancient council at the bottom of the abyss to evaluate some specific abyssal lifeforms, simulate and improve the structure of the crazy abyss, and so on. I didn't expect the Abyss Party to be able to lead here. We seem to be in the Council's creation hall. It's a pity that Father is not here, otherwise it would be more fun." At this time, one of the counselors spoke. "Congratulations to the 3 party participants, who have been lucky enough to come to us for a special test party. Next, we need you to work together to help test a new abyssal lifeform that we have created. It is still in the initial stage of testing, and there are still many instability. I hope that through the confrontation between you, we can collect enough test data to perfect the subsequent creation of this new abyssal lifeform." When Grimm heard this, his eyes widened. It seemed that Grimm's birth had a certain relationship with this test. He also wanted to see if there would be an abyssal lifeform more perfect than him after so many years. Chapter 1724. Han Dong stared at the center of the scene, at the rotating chaos pillar. "Grimm, could it be, Nicholas, your guess is right. My first stage model was researched and created by this group of people. These guys were recognized by my father and were arranged to be researchers in the Abyss Council. They were mainly responsible for combining the basic characteristics of the primordial chaos to carry out the first model construction. My body of the Abyss was proposed by one of the researchers in the early days. After thousands of years of testing, they obtained a first model that could barely be used in theory and handed it to my father to inject chaos. Is that so? Since it's based on a model, there should be other individuals similar to you, Grimm? Grimm shook his finger. Oh, there's no such thing. Indeed, in theory, as long as you follow the model, you can get countless of me. In fact, ever since my father got the first model, he has been injecting chaos. He had created hundreds of thousands, even millions of me. Unfortunately, most of them couldn't even achieve basic stability. Even if they were successful, they could only live for a few days and were swallowed by the uncontrollable abyss holes on the surface of their bodies. I was the only one who barely survived. My father also consumed a large amount of chaos origin in this process, and even went into hibernation for hundreds of years. The model used to create me should be the most complicated and the least stable. I wonder how the new model made by these guys will be like? This. Han Dong was very clear about Grimm's uniqueness, but he didn't expect the process of Grimm's birth to be so exaggerated. The Chaos Team, which symbolized the top of S01, spent thousands of years developing the model. Finally, it was handed over to the Supreme to inject chaos. Even so, the failure rate was still 1 in hundreds of thousands. Grimm's birth could even be seen as a miracle. Perhaps there was a problem with the model itself. It was impossible to get an individual like Grimm. It was only because of some absolute coincidence and opportunity that such a special existence was born. Han Dong continued. If that's the case, a large number of elites in the Abyss of Chaos, or Grimm, your brothers and sisters, were all obtained through the model? Including the Tooth Emperor we saw at the entrance? That's right. Chaos can't give birth to life. The only existence that was truly born out of chaos was his father. In order to create an army that could crush all living beings and flatten the world, my old man came up with the idea of creating more primordial creatures of chaos in the form of a mold. So that's how it is. Chaos creation? Han Dong smelled a hint of scientific research. He locked onto the chaos stone pillar with 100% of his demonic eye and tried to engrave the multidimensional movement pattern on the surface of the stone pillar into his brain. Although it ended in failure, however, Han Dong was able to decipher part of the information about the stone pillar, as well as the basic principle of making the mold. The migration, transformation, and transformation of these different stones seems to represent a kind of life equation. The reason I could barely read it, this was because the life transformation was similar to Morgan's technology. Morgan used his super powerful Migo brain to create a mental model of the life he wanted to create. Then, with any biomass material as the foundation, it could rapidly create creatures. Although there were similarities, the Chaos Stone pillars involved a much deeper domain. At the very least, the Chaos Stone pillar's ability to process and transform chaos was something that I couldn't understand. It was probably a theoretical equation that these guys had obtained by analyzing the foundation of Grimm's father. It was even possible that it was the life equation that the Supreme Chaos had analyzed and analyzed. Only in this way could it be possible to create special life in the chaos that was contrary to life. How interesting! I don't know if I can use the doctor's brain to deconstruct the experimental subject in this test. If I can, I might be able to meet the requirements of this group of counselors in advance. I might even help them and provide them with relevant optimization plans. When it came to scientific research, Han Dong was naturally interested. At this moment, all the researchers standing on the side platform looked at the Chaos Stone pillar through the eyeballs floating on their neck. The integration of consciousness. They directly imported their thoughts into the stone pillar and activated the core equation. For a moment, the stones at different sections and levels of the stone pillar began to gradually move in parallel and synchronize their rotation speed. The entire body emitted a dark red luster, as if some kind of terrifying life was about to be created. Even at this moment, Grimm still had no intention of entering combat state. He maintained his arms open and felt the familiar feeling of the life equation. It was as if it reminded him of the moment when he was first created. Sally was the complete opposite. While she was falling, she had already entered combat state. Not only did she reveal a part of the black goat's original form, she also pulled out a piece of equipment that Han Dong had never seen before from her navel. A material similar to an umbilical cord was wrapped around her right arm. It looked like a long whip, but it was more like a special piece of equipment related to reproduction. As for Han Dong, who was hiding at the back, he maintained the posture of a faceless one. One of his hands had been inserted into the back of his head, as if he was fiddling with something in the prison world. An awkward expression could be vaguely seen between the smooth braised eggs. When I came to the center of chaos, this truth demonic sword became extremely quiet and even took the initiative to retreat. I don't know if the effect will be greatly weakened when I use it later. Let's observe the strength of the enemy first. If Grimm and Sally can fight head-on, they shouldn't be at a disadvantage, so there's no need to use the demonic sword. Just as Han Dong was thinking of this, buzz, a circle of consciousness spread out from the bottom of the stone pillar. Including Grimm, due to the spread of the consciousness wave, all the individuals in the field were cut off for a moment. When their consciousness was restored, a strange eyeball was reflected in their minds. The eyeball was surrounded by flame-like tentacles, and as a whole, it looked like a distorted star. The pupil in the center was like a chaotic star that was filled with holes. It was slowly rotating. This is... Except for Grimm, Han Dong and Sally instinctively retreated. When they reopened their eyes, a chaotic creature was already standing beside the stone pillar. Its torso seemed to have a big hole gouged out, and the chaotic eyeball that had just appeared in everyone's minds was suspended in it. The main focus was on Grimm. At the same time, there was also a wave of pressure. Han Dong was so scared that he immediately retrieved the truth demonic sword that was hidden deep in his mind back to reality. The scabbard of the tentacles was attached to his waist, ready to draw the sword at any time. What the hell, directly to regent level? Chapter 1725. Even though he had already revealed his king-level aura, even though the core eyeball of this lifeform was staring at the young man who was exuding the same chaotic aura as him, treating him as its primary target and analyzing the relevant body structure, Grimm still did not have the slightest preparation state. Instead, all of his attention was locked on the other party's eyeball, and even showed an extremely greedy expression. This is the first time I've seen such a chaotic eyeball. It's exactly the same as a chaotic star. Has the technology of these guys improved again? He was actually able to completely simulate the star of chaos and present it in his eyes as a pupil. It seems that these guys who stay in the depths have some skills. They have created such an interesting mold. It's so fragrant, it would be great if such an eyeball could be embedded in my body. Grimm was already starting to feel greedy. Among the 10 primes, his eye alone was not even in the top 3. Eugene's eye was recognized as the strongest among the primes. The second was Aslan's lost continent from the northern continent, Hippolylia, which was passed down from ancient times. It was called the heirloom pearl of Hippolylia. It was embedded in Aslan's soul and could grow together with the individual. The third was a little controversial. It was difficult to say who was more powerful between Pope's starry eyes and Helen's hidden eyes. Grimm's eye of the abyss was not bad at all. But he was far from satisfied. he also longed for a very useful eye. This was also the reason why he borrowed Eugene's eyeball and immersed himself in it during the first game in London. But in the end, he did not take it by force. Because that would be meaningless, after all, Eugene could still bring him some joy. In front of the Chaos Stone pillar, an individual was created. In addition to the setting of the Eye of the Chaos, suspended in the hollow body. This thing did not have a fixed form when it was born. It was a cluster of tightly woven chaotic tentacles. Each chaotic tentacle maintained a high degree of coordination with the eyeball. Grimm, Handong, and Sally were the first type of life observed when it was born. It also very naturally imitated their posture, forming a torso and limbs. At this time, the researcher in the observation area, who was mainly responsible for mold design and production, gave a simple explanation. This primal chaos body that is still being tested is called the Eye of the Abyss. Currently, the reason why it can be stabilized to king level, lower level, is entirely because of the integrated consciousness of our many researchers and the Chaos Stone pillar that created it. Without any of these, it would not be able to exist independently. We hope that we can find the flaws in the mold through fighting with you. Once we meet the test requirements, we will voluntarily disintegrate. Of course, it would be best if you could defeat it head-on. Considering that our integrated consciousness has set it as king level, lower level, we will give you 10 minutes to adapt. You can observe it through any non-contact means. There's no need for that. I'm in a hurry to head to the next party area. Let's begin, researchers. Just as Glenn threw out this sentence, 1. The Eye of Chaos suddenly changed direction. The focus of his eyes shifted from Grimm's body to the ground where Grimm was. Glenn, be careful. Han Dong noticed this detail and hurriedly gave a warning. Whoosh. Demon, who was originally dozens of meters away, was stunned. Without any time interval or changes in spatial processes, a kind of shift took place, directly appearing in the focal point of the vision, which was in front of Glenn. Glenn, who was not ready for battle, had no time to dodge or parry. At the same time, in the previous observation, the Eye of Chaos had completed the analysis of Glenn's body. A slap landed on the right side of Glenn's chest. Slap. Logically speaking, a direct attack from a king level should have directly shattered Glenn's body. However, when the slap landed, there was only a dull thud, and Glenn's body did not shatter. For a moment, Glenn's expression changed drastically, and he spat out a mouthful of turbid body fluid. At the same time, at the spot where he was hit, creak creak, tentacles from Demon were drilling into the depths of Glenn's body through the holes on the surface of his body. This abyssal hole could directly reach Glenn's body, the extremely important breeding area. Once it was invaded, Glenn's life would be in danger. As expected of a primal chaos body, has the observation completed the deconstruction of my body? This eye is amazing. Glenn sighed after saying this. Creak creak. A black blade, made of dense fingernails and a female's arm, as the hilt drilled out from behind Glenn's back and hung above his head. Downward slash. During the slash, every fingernail that made up the blade could cut through space. The slash caused a lot of noise. The trajectory of the slash and the surrounding space were completely torn into thin strips, causing a strong spatial turbulence. However, the target of this slash was not the Demon. It was Glenn himself. Glenn's body was completely torn apart, and some of the Demon's tentacles that were drilling in his body were also torn apart. In the next second, the small hole in Han Dong's shoulder sensed something. An arm full of mucus stretched out, and the reborn Glenn crawled out at the fastest speed and grabbed the hilt of Miss Lyle's arm. It's really strong. All of its abilities are based on the eye. The chaotic tentacles that make up the body can exert 120% of its strength under the control of the eye. The pressure from a king level even made it difficult for my territory to open. It's been a long time since I've encountered something so interesting. I'll try to fight this thing head-on. You two can help me indirectly from the side. If you see that I'm about to be killed, just lend a little help." "Okay." Han Dong agreed immediately. Combined with the existing information to achieve the greatest victory, as long as Glenn could hold on, letting Han Dong watch the battle was the best choice. Sally gritted her teeth and whispered, "Glenn, my territory should be able to help you recover and nurture the abyss. At the right time, I'll interfere with the vision of this eye." "Sure, as long as you don't die." "Okay." As soon as Sally finished her sentence, she turned around. A terrifying feeling of being stared at suddenly came. This time, the eye was no longer staring at Glenn, nor was it looking at the surrounding ground. Perhaps because of Glenn's strange manipulation, it caused its tentacles to be cut off, allowing the eye demon to change its combat style. It chose Sally, who was also exuding a mythical aura. Oh no. This guy is a parasitic type. Its attack on Glenn just now seemed to be destroying the abyss in his body, but in fact it was planning to parasitize him. When Han Dong realized this, it was already too late. Spaceless transfer, there was no time to dodge, and Sally did not even have time to self-reproduce to avoid it. Squeak, squeak, squeak. Chaotic tentacles drilled directly into Sally's body, along with a large number of tentacles moving under the skin. Swoosh. Sally's chest and abdomen were torn open, forming a large round bloody hole. The chaotic eye that invaded her body was suspended in the center of the hole. Buzz. A circle of purple ripples spread out under her feet, and a king-level territory that merged with Sally's attributes instantly covered the surrounding area. Black trees that were constantly secreting mucus rose from the ground. At the same time, in the center of the tree trunk, a strange eye opened one after another. Fusion Territory, Black Forest, Eye. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.